welcome to this historic broadcast of the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. Guilty, guilty, guilty. All 34 counts. Donald Trump found guilty in the New York hush money case. Donald Trump became the first former president ever convicted of a crime, with a Manhattan jury finding him guilty Thursday of 34 felonies for falsifying records to cover up hush money paid to a porn star. The Wall Street Journal reporting the historic verdict stemming from conduct that took place around Trump's run to the presidency could threaten his 2024 bid to return to the White House. Trump can still run, and as poll numbers remain steady during the more than month-long trial, though some voters have said they might be less likely to vote for him if he were convicted. We're looking to hear from you today. Phone lines are open. 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. What are your thoughts on this historic verdict coming in yesterday afternoon? Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in the New York hush money case. We're going to get feedback and response and reaction from a variety of folks, including Chris Murray coming up here in just a second. George Brauchler will join us later. Heidi Ganahl, Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, and Representative Lauren Boebert as well. We'll be getting feedback, reaction. What does this mean? What does this mean for the country? What does this mean for the election? How are things going to move forward? All of that and more. You're going to want to stick with us through this historic broadcast today. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 50 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the upper 70s this afternoon. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
But as a country as a whole, we have a system in place to review this. For Donald Trump, that's not going to happen before the election in all likelihood. But let's keep in mind that this is not the only court. It's just the first one.
Law professor Jonathan Turley on Fox News Channel last night. Lefties love this. Chaos, confusion. If you fear your political opponent, find a judge and an AG who ideologically agree with you and go find something on the guy you hate because you know the majority of Americans support him. These were misdemeanors, and in order for them to rise to a felony, you needed a second crime, but no one knows what the crime was. Travesty of justice.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here. Everybody knows what happened here.
Judge Juan Mersham did what he was supposed to do for the Democrats. He weaponized it. Barricades outside Trump Tower this morning where the former president scheduled to speak. Here's Ted Cruz.
The chances that this decision is overturned on appeal, I believe, are 100.0.
All right, the metro area cleaning up after severe thunderstorms dropped large destructive hail last night. Tennis ball-sized hail pummeled cars, houses, and businesses, leaving shattered windows and damaged siding. Denver, North Glen, Thornton, Commerce City, and Aurora hit hardest. Hail accumulation at least 5 inches deep was reported on Tower Road. A homicide investigation is ongoing after a woman once again was found dead in Sheridan on Thursday. We told you about that yesterday morning. The victim was found dead from a gunshot wound at a home along West Dill Road near Marston Lake. Investigators say the deadly shooting stemmed from a domestic violence incident, and a suspect has been identified. Police haven't released the identity of the victim or the suspect. A multi-vehicle crash resulted in a significant fuel leak in Aurora on Thursday. Aurora Fire Rescue called to the scene at Airport Boulevard and 22nd Avenue, where a 100-gallon fuel tank being hauled by one of the vehicles was ruptured and leaking onto the road. Crews soaked up the fuel on the road using absorbent materials and removed the remaining fuel from the tank. One person taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. One person has been confirmed dead after the suspected gas leak at the Western Sugar Plant in Fort Morgan, and 4 others, including 2 responding firefighters, passed out and were taken to the hospital. Authorities and plant officials say it was likely a hydrogen sulfide gas leak, which can be released when organic materials break down. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Vice President Kamala Harris giving the commencement at the Air Force Academy Thursday.
80 years ago, over the beaches of Normandy, America won control of the skies, and we have kept it ever since.
This is true. She sounded inspired, but hey, I'll give her credit. I like that soundbite, and I haven't heard the whole thing. So with everything going on Thursday, I didn't get a chance to hear it, but I'll try to listen to her commencement speech. I'm sure it was
what are you doing with your weekend, Blake? Listening to the commencement speech of Kamala Harris.
From Kamala, that's right.
The Western Conference champions are the Dallas Mavericks. They're going to the NBA Finals. They'll take on the Boston Celtics.
Luka Doncic, 10 3-pointers, 36 points. And the Mavs headed to the NBA Finals, defeated the T-Wolves 124-103. In Game 5 Western Conference Finals last night, the Rocks started 3-game series with L.A. And the Dodgers today, they're coming off 2 of 3 against the Guardians from Cleveland. It's 47 in Lone Tree, 46 in Boulder, 50 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue on Friday. Friday night. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The 710 5-day forecast calls for very typical weather for this time of year through the weekend. Temperatures will be in the 70s today. Afternoon and evening thunderstorms and scattered showers possible. Lows tonight near 50. We're going to be a little bit warmer. Daytime temperature readings will be reaching the low to mid 80s Saturday. We could be quite warm, 85 to 90 Sunday and into Monday, well into the 80s Tuesday. For the weekend, we cannot rule out some scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. I'm meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. On this historic broadcast, Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in the New York hush money case. Text messages coming in. It's New York. Is anyone really surprised? 7127-5600. Jeff, don't use the communist language. It's not a hush money case. It's a communist show trial or election interference trial or election derailment trial. Blake gets it. 5637. Today is not theater of the mind, but Trump worship. The greatest nation in history can do much better in its governing class. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Tell us what you thought of the verdict yesterday. We're going to get to Chris Murray here in just a second. Here's my thoughts. I took some time last night to write them down. This is on my webpage, jeffhunt.com, if you want to go read it there. Another American institution falls to the radical left. In a city that went 76% for Joe Biden against Donald Trump in 2020, with a district attorney funded by radical leftist donors and who campaigned and bragged about suing Donald Trump over 100 times, that partnered with a senior official from Biden's Department of Justice, with a judge who donated to Joe Biden and an organization named Stop Republicans, who has a daughter that is president of a Democratic online fundraising company that served Biden-Harris in 2020, Donald Trump was found guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. One of the last institutions Americans trusted, our justice system, has fallen to the radical left. When our institutions become leftist, they lose all credibility. Trust in the media, for example, is at an all-time low, as is trust in our government-run schools. Gallup records that trust in business, police, the medical system, and our military is also dropping. To achieve political wins, Democrats have politicized our most trusted institutions. For instance, a Supreme Court justice nomination was a relatively low-key practice for most of American history. Following Ted Kennedy's torpedoing of Robert Bork in 1987, they are now nuclear battles between the left and the right. The impeachment process, once a rare act of Congress, is now tit for tat, depending on who controls Congress. Before Donald Trump even took office, Democrats were organizing an effort to impeach him following the 2016 election. Even the process to put a candidate on the ballot has become politicized in Colorado. The job as Secretary of the State used to be mundane and inconspicuous. Under Jenna Griswold has become hyper-partisan, with her having leftist organizations like Planned Parenthood reviewing her talking points and her actively working to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. Fortunately, we had at least one neutral institution left. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, stopped her. We have an open border, violence in our cities, a homelessness epidemic, record drug overdoses, a country $34 trillion in debt, schools that fail our children, and our nation's democratic political leaders are using the courts to go after political opponents. They're also using the legal system to strip any attorney who worked with Donald Trump of their law licenses in an effort to intimidate all Republican lawyers. This is anarcho-tyranny. Anarchy for the real criminals in the streets, tyranny against political opponents. The Machiavellian viciousness of the radical left in America is destroying the institutions and the moral fabric of this nation. America is in a death spiral, and the voters must set it right. Your vote against the radical left this November is the American Republic's last hope. What do you think of that? Those were my thoughts on the sham verdict that came down yesterday against Donald Trump. Give me a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. Let's go to Chris Murray. He was an attorney that helped us analyze this court case over the last few weeks. Really appreciate all that he did to provide some analysis. He's a partner with First and 14th Law firm here in Colorado. Chris, give me your thoughts on what happened yesterday.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Bill. Well, first thought is that I'm genuinely surprised. I think folks who listened to the show on Tuesday heard me say that I thought the most likely outcome here was a hung jury. And until about late yesterday afternoon, I thought things were on course to go that direction as the court was getting ready to excuse the jury for another day. And my private, bar that I shared, that I shared with some friends who asked me, hey, when is a hung jury sort of a lock? I thought it was by next Tuesday. When they came back with a verdict late yesterday afternoon, I thought, well, that is probably not good for the former president, because that's relatively quick. It's actually less than 2 days, 2 full days of deliberation. And in a case like this, especially when they came back shortly after listening to sections of Michael Cohen and David Pecker's testimony, it sounded to me like they were trying to find a way to convict.
So, Chris Murray, I looked at this case, read the transcripts, listened and watched the reporting on it. They never televised this case. You had to rely either on transcripts or secondhand reporting. The fact that they got to beyond a reasonable doubt and guilty of an additional crime that was kind of not theirs to prosecute, right? It's not the state's ability to prosecute you on federal election crimes. I thought if I was sitting there, I would have gone, you can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and you can't just willy-nilly attach this to a federal crime that you're not able to prosecute. But the jury seemed to see it differently. What happened there?
Well, and then so the first thing I am surprised on the beyond a reasonable doubt, even on the falsification of business records part of this, right, which is sort of the state law crime part of the case. Again, I am surprised because I think that the only witness that provides direct evidence of Trump's knowledge of the potential falsification of business records was Michael Cohen. And I thought that the most effective portion of the defense's case was their cross-examination of Michael Cohen. I didn't think there was much left of him as a witness after that cross-examination. So I was surprised there. You mentioned a big issue, which is the second crime, which in order to turn this from, so falsification of business records by itself in New York, that's a misdemeanor. And it comes with almost no possibility for jail time. It's basically a fine. It's never prosecuted. The Class E felonies, which President Trump was convicted of, are falsification of business records in order to cover up another criminal activity. And I think that's where this case likely gets overturned on appeal. Because you may have heard when the jury instructions went out, right? The court basically said, hey, look, whatever that other crime was that former President Trump was falsifying business records in order to cover it up, jury, you don't need to agree on what that crime was. You don't need to agree that that crime existed beyond a reasonable doubt. Every one of you could have a different theory about what that crime was. And that was actually in the jury instructions. Said, look, you don't need to agree on what other crime he was covering up. Just all you need to agree is that he was covering up some other crime. And I've never seen a jury instruction like that.
Well, he's not even found guilty of. So by nature of this law, and this goes to, I think, a problem with the New York law, Chris Murray, is that you allow juries to essentially determine somebody's guilty of another crime without, one, being charged for the crime, and two, without there ever even being a process to convict them of that crime.
I agree. I think a couple weeks ago we were talking about the fact that the court excluded a witness that Donald Trump wanted to call, right, who was a former Federal Election commissioner and an expert in, hey, you know, one of the theories of the prosecution was that they were covering up a campaign finance violation. It was probably the most viable theory of the prosecution. But the court didn't permit this witness to testify about the difference between a civil violation of the federal campaign finance laws and a criminal violation of the federal campaign finance laws. At the time, I think I incorrectly thought, hey, that's actually probably better because that is going to be a highly technical piece of testimony that a jury is probably not going to get. And if you're spending a lot of time with an expert witness trying to explain why another crime didn't happen, that's not great if you're a defendant. I think I was incorrect there too. I think, as it turns out, the exclusion of that testimony was material.
Talking with Chris Murray, he's a partner with First and 14th Law. They're a law firm here in Colorado doing great work. Chris, let's talk about Trump's attorneys and how they handled this case. I was watching MSNBC because I wanted to go see what the other side was doing. They had Michael Cohen on yesterday, and Michael Cohen front and center with like 8 panelists on all sides of him, absolutely spiking the football. But one of the things that even Cohen was saying was that Trump seemed to be too involved in guiding his own defense and that he didn't allow his attorneys to really engage this the right way. Fair critique? Your thoughts?
So it may be a fair critique, but the point that you made just at the top of the show, which is that you're relying on cold transcripts, right? And then secondhand news reporting of what's going on in the courtroom. Well, then look, that's me too. I can read. That's how I prepare to talk to you guys. Is I read the transcripts of what's happened in court, right? And I take a look at the commentary from a couple smart folks that I think do a better job than most reporting on the case. But Donald Trump is notoriously, right, always involved in the way his lawyers handle different things. I think that's pretty easy for Michael Cohen to say, who's not a lawyer for President Trump anymore, and who I think has lost his law license. But I just don't know if President Trump was micromanaging his legal team or not. I will say that from the transcripts, again, the technical lawyering I saw from President Trump's team looked pretty good to me.
Now, I did hear something yesterday. Todd Blanche, I believe, was on Hannity. Because like Jeff, I'm jumping back and forth. I'm going from MSNBC to Fox and back and forth. And again, so it's a blur. It was a long night. But I think it's Todd Blanche, Hannity. He said that Trump was very much involved in his own defense. In fact, he talked about passing notes over to the lawyers during certain parts of the trial. They would huddle together and talk about what the strategy was. He gave the impression that Trump was very involved in the planning and execution of his defense.
Yeah, I mean, and Bill, again, so I've tried some cases in my time. I've never had a client, right, who hasn't passed me notes during trial, right? They just do it, right? Why? Because clients, so it's a lawyer's job to know a client's story almost better than a client when you're going to trial, right? However, clients still know their story really, really well. And this is their life, right, that's at issue here. You would expect them to pass notes to you. You would expect them to be agitated. And frankly, if they're not, that's sort of bizarre, right? I mean, how can you be bored at your own trial? And that's so I don't think any passing notes, asking to talk about things, you would expect that, and you would expect that somebody would be involved in their own defense. Ordinarily, that's really good, right? I think the impression that Michael Cohen was trying to give, based on Jeff's question on MSNBC, you'll be surprised to know I did not spend yesterday watching Michael Cohen on MSNBC.
No?
Yeah.
You mean you just call out what you needed to on Instagram, because that's where that's where you follow him. I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's where you get all the good stuff.
That's all the best. That's where all the best legal knowledge is found.
Chris, I do want to ask you this question. What happens next? July 11th is the sentencing hearing. What are the options before the judge, and what are the options before the Trump defense to appeal this?
Okay, so the verdict has come in. So the Trump defense is on the clock to appeal the verdict. They don't need to wait for the sentence to file a notice of appeal. They've got 30 days to file a notice of appeal. I would expect that they will get that notice of appeal in probably sooner than 30 days, but given that 30 days comes up before the sentencing, I would expect them to have a robust initial notice of appeal. They then get 6 months after that to perfect the appeal, to get it set up for the New York Appellate Division. The options for the judge on July 11th, for Judge Marchand on July 11th, they basically run the gamut. He could do anything from I'm going to, impose a fine, no jail time. He could impose basically, a minimum fine on all these counts, no jail time. He could impose probation. He could impose some sort of, what people will call like a white collar sentence, right? Which is, hey, here's a fine. You're going to do some jail time, but it's going to be, every other weekend for 5 weeks, right? It could be home confinement. Or he could decide to go hog wild and impose a full 4 years.
Now, Chris Murray, got a chance. I want to follow up on the sentencing and the appellate process. I personally believe that Trump's team will file as late as possible, only because that's kind of that's what they do. They always seem to run right up against the deadlines. It also then lengthens the amount of the 6 months, because they file early, the 6 month clock kind of starts ticking a little bit. So they need as much time as possible. But I want to talk about the big elephant in the room, the Supremes. He will try to get this to the Supreme Court. Now, just taking off, not looking as official legal consultant, I'm just talking about dude in a bar. What do you think the odds are that the Supreme Court takes up this case?
I think that the odds are low. I think that they go up a little bit if any significant incarceration is imposed, and that includes home confinement, right? So I think if the judge imposes any kind of sentence, and anything more than, hey, we're going to have you do 3 Saturdays at Rikers Island, right? Anything more than that, or we're going to have you do 2 weeks at home confinement. Anything other than sort of a perfunctory confinement, the chances that the U.S. Supreme Court do go up on the First Amendment basis. I'll say this, though, too. I think that if there is any significant prison sentence imposed, any significant confinement imposed, the New York Appellate Division routinely on these sorts of felonies will stay a prison sentence or even any sentence until an appeal is litigated. And so I would actually expect that the New York appellate courts would say, hey, let's hold on. We're going to hear this appeal. Until we hear this appeal, you don't need to serve the sentence. And if they do that, the Supreme Court won't be interested.
And constitutionally, Chris Murray, partner of First and 14th, help us understand what happens if he becomes the president of the United States. If Donald Trump becomes president in November, can he pardon himself? Does this thing continue? Where does it go after that?
So he cannot pardon himself because this is not a federal crime. He cannot pardon himself. So this will, if he becomes president, all of this sort of continues. You could see the New York courts. I mean, the New York appellate process, right, will take, after the appeal is perfected in 6 months, right, which already you're in the end of the year, that the litigation of that appeal could take a year, right? So let's say that appellate decision comes down at the end of 25 and you've got President Trump in office, and let's say his conviction is upheld. Well, he then still gets to seek review from the Supreme Judicial Court in New York, or it's called the Superior Court in New York, but it's actually their Supreme Court. And that process could take another couple of years. But if eventually this is all upheld, right, well, then it's up to the New York court system and the New York state system to decide if it's actually going to insist on enforcing the sentence while the president is in office. And what my bet would be is that if the sentence were affirmed, but you've got President Trump in office, that they would either defer the sentence or, that there may be a revisitation of what the appropriate sentence is.
That is wild. So he could still end up in prison after he becomes the president of the United States. Probably not while he's the president of the United States, but later afterwards if this whole thing gets deferred. So we're going to have to continue to deal with this for years, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, Jeff and Bill, I'm just like everybody else listening to the show when you ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never seen this, right? I mean, so I can tell you, the stages in the legal process. We have never dealt with a situation where, hey, we've got a fella who owes a state some prison time, but he's going to be busy in the Oval Office.
That's crazy.
That is wild. Chris Murray, partner at First and 14th Law. Thanks so much for journeying with us through all this for the past few weeks, providing great analysis and then helping us understand what happened yesterday on this historic decision that came through. Chris, really appreciate you being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, it's my pleasure, guys. What a time to be alive.
Seriously. We're going to get to the phone calls. Give us a call on what you think about this. We got an open line, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. Don, you're going to be up next. A lot of us are struggling to keep up with everyday bills. Thank you, Bidenomics, food, gas, and even that power bill. If you own a home, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Interest rates have dropped into the fives, which is nearly a quarter of the average credit card rate. American Financing is saving their customers an average of $854 a month by tapping into their home's equity and wiping out high interest credit card debt. $854 a month is like a $10,000 raise. Credit card interest rates are insane, and most of us are still carrying a balance from month to month. Oh, painful. Call American Financing and take care of that today. And if you call today, you may not have to make next month's mortgage payment. American Financing, 303-695-7000. That's 303-695-7000. AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182334. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the five start at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 303-695-7000 for details about credit costs and terms. Here's who I'm looking to talk to, Bill.
Yeah.
Did this verdict yesterday change your opinion on the election and who you're going to vote for?
That's interesting.
Were you a Donald Trump supporter and now you go, he's a convicted felon?
Yeah.
Nope. I'm not pulling the lever for him anymore. I'm now going over to Joe Biden. Or were you not a Donald Trump fan? You saw what happened yesterday. You've seen this sham trial. You're frustrated and angry with what Democrats are doing with lawfare. And now you are going to pull the lever for Donald Trump. Has that verdict yesterday changed your opinion? I would like to hear 303-696-1971. Let's go to Don in Colorado Springs. Don, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning.
Good morning, boys. I knew I'd be calling you guys after this came down.
I'm glad you were thinking, I got to call the Jeff and Bill Show. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I try to call one out of D.C., but the lines are tied up, and they have to play so many commercials, which keeps the money going. Anyway, the thing of it is, I'm trying to put my mind around it, but it doesn't surprise me. But I think people should remember one person when this happened, and that is Marion Barry. Now, that was a local election, but, being Washington, D.C., that's where definitely all politics are local. And in spite of that conviction, in spite of the scarlet letter being put on Marion Barry, when he ran for mayor, the idiots in the city, regardless of skin color, pigmentation, it's about the mind and heart, they rushed to put him back into our office.
So, Don, would you say that Trump supporters are idiots for voting for him in spite of this conviction?
No. We have no choice. I didn't want Trump to run again, but he resonates with a lot of people and, on so many things. And when he says fake news and all of that, that's basically us saying it. This is one reason why Rush Limbaugh resonated with the people. But the thing of it is, he didn't want to be a politician because he loved radio too much, and he clinged onto that till the very end. But it's that resonation with the American people that counts. And one thing that Trump did that Rush didn't do was to become a politician.
Now, Don,
official.
how persuasive, one side or the other, do you think this verdict is? What I'm referring to is the question that Jeff asked earlier, just a couple of minutes ago. How many Trump supporters now, because of the conviction, are going to leave him, or even soft supporters, and how many non-Trump supporters will be convinced of the sham trial and now switch over to be supporters? Just what do you think is, the numbers are going to be on either side?
I cannot say as of right away, but right now I think the reaction is, you know what, this is a sham election. No, not a sham election. This was a sham trial. This was exactly what Mark Levin has been saying on his show. This was just a way to put a scarlet letter on Donald J. Trump and the courts. And if SCOTUS does not intervene, which I'm afraid that they may not, it'll stick there. The Biden campaign will do what they're going to do. It doesn't matter if Trump actually rots in jail and all that. What matters is that Joe Biden scores a second term, the Democrats score their second term, and they move forward with their agenda, which, at least in this modern day and age, began with Barack Obama. Heck, I saw somebody on Twitter, and I just decided I've had enough of this person. He said that the best president of all time was Barack Obama and the worst president was Ronald Reagan. But history has proven otherwise, and Peter Boyles became a fan of Ronald Reagan, if not already. I mean, Peter Boyles was a liberal that kind of nudged a little more to the right over the years.
Yep. Don, appreciate the call.
Yeah,
Don from Colorado Springs. Give us your thoughts on this verdict from yesterday. Historic verdict coming down, 34 counts. Donald Trump found guilty in this New York Manhattan trial. 303-696-1971 or text us on the 710 KNUS app. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
to the Jeff and Bill Show on this historic broadcast. Donald Trump being found guilty of 34 felonies. Goodness, lots of text messages coming in. I am totally voting for Trump. Absolutely. Everything they do to him makes him stronger. I would not like him as much as I do if the Democrats weren't a bunch of bullies and hypocrites. Screw the Democrats. 5873. And literally the next text message.
Yeah.
From Susan in Denver. Trump supporters will never leave him. It's a cult. I do not understand why people think 12 people are stupid and cannot judge the evidence. Don't insult the jury.
That's interesting.
Susan from Devon. And then 8505, George Brauchler, by the way, coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. They want to know, he said multiple times he probably couldn't vote for a felon. I wonder what he's going to say now.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a difficult one. And I see what Susan is saying about, I don't think that many Trump supporters are necessarily going to abandon him. I think the some that were persuadable, the DeSantis voters, the Haley supporters, I think this felony conviction gives them permission to, I'm not so certain, I'm not convinced they'll choose Biden, but what they'll probably do is just skip it. Or they'll do RFK. They'll do something so they don't have to flip the lever for the guy that is the convicted felon because they didn't like him to begin with. But I do think there are some persuadable middle of the road people that are soft Biden supporters that could be persuaded by this verdict, that could turn around and go, oh, I see the narrative and Donald Trump's being held accountable for things that he didn't really do. And they're really misdemeanors. They're only felonies. And I think that could work too in his favor.
Yeah, I'm not fully convinced that everybody's going to look at this and go, Donald Trump needs to be put in office. I think you will have especially moderate, college-educated, suburban women that already don't like Donald Trump, that this is going to give them the permission to go, absolutely not, he's a convicted felon. Me, on the other hand, and I said this right at the beginning of the show, I read this is a continuation of the radical left destroying the institutions in America, now making the justice system hyper-partisan, and it makes me want to vote for Donald Trump even harder. And look, I'm a Bible-believing evangelical. I don't think he's the savior. There's things about his personal life I don't like. But man, what the left is doing to politicize all this stuff, I'm like, donate to Donald Trump. That's where I am. We've got Tony. Yes. Love it. Tony Littleton, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Tony.
Hey,
were you
morning.
spiking the football yesterday?
No, it's kind of interesting. There was no spiking. As I followed the case with you guys and I was listening to you guys each morning, I was always kind of surprised that's why I was challenging Chris along the way a little bit. It's because I wasn't hearing the same thing you guys were hearing. I was listening principally to Lawrence O'Donnell at night, who's a former attorney and was in the courtroom, and so I was not surprised by the verdict. I wouldn't say that I predicted that they were going to find him guilty. I thought it would be a hung jury. And just like those guys last night, I mean, as you watched it, they weren't really spiking the football. They were cheering that the institution held. They felt good about the fact that we went through a trial, 12 jurors came to the conclusion. There was a lot of respect paid toward those jurors by what I saw on MSNBC and a few other places. There compliments that way. And I think another thing that I think is probably surprising was Marshawn. He's had nothing but the highest marks as he's gone through this. So I'm not surprised by the verdict. And in terms of it influencing people, it won't influence one MAGA supporter. Not a single MAGA supporter is going to jump over and all of a sudden vote for Biden or set it out. Now, there will be some Republicans that this may be too much for them. And at this point, it's like, okay, maybe like a George Brauchler, maybe he's going to be one of those types of people who say, all right, this is probably gone as far as it needs to go. I think a lot of people, at least I feel, and I think the message that was coming across from from some of the media is our institutions have held again. They held in 2020 and they held again.
Now, Tony, I want to explore that just for a second. I like the phrase, and I want to have you discuss your opinion about what I see as dueling narratives, because I see on one media ecosystem, it's what you say, that our institutions have held, that we had a crisis in 2020, and once again, the judicial system prevailed and showed that no one's above the law. The other ecosystem is saying sham trial, stolen election in 2020, Biden's corrupt, the judge is corrupt, the prosecutor's corrupt, the entire process is corrupt. This is nothing more than a kangaroo court, and now we live in a banana republic. We are in the same country with two media narratives that are 180 degrees away from each other. How is that going to impact the election?
Look, that's terrifying. That's terrifying that the country is there. There's no doubt. That's why I said I'm not betting that democracy's safe yet. I'm not. It's just so far it's holding. And you've got to remember the other side, the foundation of it is a conspiracy theory. It all starts with a conspiracy theory that the election was stolen to begin with. And everything else falls out of that. And I can't do anything about that. That's a conspiracy. It's not real. It's not true. It's like saying the earth is flat, gravity's not real, the tooth fairy is real. It's not true. And so when you're starting there as your base, the foundation of your entire argument, and now they've rolled it into, it's all a sham. And the last caller you had, or last texter, she hit it right on the head. Do you really think that this whole conspiracy, judges, prosecutors, the DNC, Biden, all of this, and yet 12 jurors, probably statistically, 2 of them may have even voted for Trump, and those 12 are a part of it too.
Tony,
they filtered out 500 jurors, got down to 50, and then got down to 12, and those 12 jurors are a part of the conspiracy.
Tony, I want to get your response to Susan Collins. This was her reaction yesterday. It is fundamental to our American system of justice that the government prosecutes cases based of alleged criminal conduct, regardless of who the defendant happens to be. In this case, the opposite has happened. The district attorney, who campaigned on a promise to prosecute Donald Trump, brought these charges precisely because of who the defendant was, rather than because of any specified criminal conduct. The political underpinnings of this case further blur the lines between the judicial system and the electoral system, and this verdict likely will be the subject of a protracted appeals process. Susan Collins, no big MAGA supporter, goes, the reason Donald Trump was prosecuted was specifically because of who he was.
Okay. And Bragg, I wished he'd never made those comments. But at the end of the day, he had to work all the way through the legal system and to bring this trial to conclusion. And if it all been a fake deal, if there was no crime there, then he likely would have ended in a hung jury. In my opinion, I am not defending Bragg. I don't like those political types of statements. But at the end of the day, it had to go through a very long, detailed political or legal process to come to its conclusion, and it's not like Trump didn't have good attorneys.
Tony, appreciate the call. We're out of time. Thanks so much. Tony's line will be open 303-696-1971. The Jeff and Bill Show will continue.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Text messages pouring in on today's show. I will vote for Donald Trump. Absolutely. 2820, over 80% of Americans can't name all three branches of government. So, of course, they will still vote for a convicted felon who sleeps with porn stars, and he will continue to try and destroy America. Really, 2820, you think that Donald Trump is destroying America with these sham banana republic trials that are taking place? My goodness. Biden won via massive mail-in vote fraud.
No, none of that's been
proven.
Come on, 9716. None of that's been proven. If you're still hanging on to that falsity, I got a bridge I'm going to sell you in New York. Call up. I'll give you a good deal on it right now.
0069, do you think the right will go after Biden now? Well done, America. Let's see how long we last. And I think Trump is a POS anyways, but the optics of this is horrible. My goodness, we're going to continue. Give us a call. George Brauchler is up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS. Is George going to vote for a felon?
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show on this historic broadcast. Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in that New York sham trial by Alvin Bragg. Lots of text messages coming in. 76-1. Trump should have stayed a Democrat. He would have never been charged. 8505, the way Trump ran his mouth after the verdict probably didn't help his sentencing. We'll find out the sentencing July 11th. Coming up in just a second is George Brauchler. Give us a call. Tell us what you think about this case. 2820, much like Susan Collins, George Brauchler will probably support Donald J. Trump now because they are Republicans and stay on the team. You have to support a convicted felon and all his lies. Who runs the RNC? To get money, you have to support Trump lies. Like that, more of a banana republic than a person getting convicted by 12 of their peers. Interesting. 5,600, a totalitarian state persecutes political enemies via show trials. Yesterday was proof that America is now a totalitarian state. I put my words down on my blog, jeffhunt.com. Another American institution falls to the radical left, our judicial system. Give us a call. Let us know what your thoughts are on the verdict yesterday. We're going to get to George Brauchler just after the news, the Blake Olson news. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning, Jeff and Billy. 51 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the upper 70s this afternoon. The 710 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
You have a so respect, DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win.
The left loves this chaos, especially in an election year. If you fear your political opponent, just find a judge and an AG who side with you, and then go find something on the guy that you hate because you know the majority of voters support him. They were misdemeanors, and then they rose to felonies. Travesty of justice. Attorney Chris Murray on with Jeff and Bill again this morning and said that he was surprised with the verdict, but it's not over.
In order to turn this from the falsification of business records by itself in New York, that's a misdemeanor. And it comes with almost no possibility for jail time. It's basically a fine. It's never prosecuted. The Class E felonies, which President Trump was convicted of, are falsification of business records in order to cover up another criminal activity. And I think that's where this case likely gets overturned on appeal.
Barricades are set up outside Trump Tower as the former president expected to speak this morning. Hey, caller Tony says all this stuff won't change anything.
It won't influence one MAGA supporter. Not a single MAGA supporter is going to jump over and all of a sudden vote for Biden or set it out.
I agree. We'll see what and hear what Trump has to say coming up. A homicide investigation is ongoing after a woman was found dead in Sheridan Thursday. The victim was found dead from a gunshot wound at a home along West Dill Road near Marston Lake. Investigators say the deadly shooting stemmed from a domestic violence incident, and a suspect has been identified. Police haven't released the identity of the victim or the suspect. Severe thunderstorms dropped large, huge, destructive hail last night in the Denver metro area. Tennis ball-sized hail pummeled cars, houses, and businesses, leaving shattered windows and damaged siding. Denver, North Glen, Thornton, Commerce City and Aurora hit hardest. Hail accumulation at least 5 inches deep was reported on Tower Road. One person has been confirmed dead after the suspected gas leak at the Western Sugar Plant in Fort Morgan, and 4 others, including 2 responding firefighters, passed out and were taken to the hospital. Authorities and plant officials say it was likely a hydrogen sulfide gas leak.
Means a lot, man. Means a lot. It's not easy. It was very hard road, very hard. But we are here. Obviously we're not done. We need 4 more, but I think today we all deserve to enjoy this win.
Luka Doncic, 10 3-pointers, 36 points. The Mavericks headed to the NBA Finals to take on the Celtics. They defeated the T-Wolves 124-103 in Game 5 Western Conference Finals last night. And happy for Kyrie Irving. He was just trashed by idiot sports reporters because he didn't take the jab 3-4 years ago and treated like a criminal and a weirdo. And he laughs last. Good for him.
We were happy where we were, but we weren't satisfied because we knew it was a long game. But when Luka starts off the game like that, I mean, we're a tough team to beat. So, kudos to him having a great series, a great playoff run in general.
And good for him. The Rockies started 3-game series in LA against the Dodgers today. They're coming off 2 of 3 against the Guardians. 49 in Greenwood Village and 48 in Lafayette, 51 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. It's Friday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The 710 5-day forecast calls for very typical weather for this time of year through the weekend. Temperatures will be in the 70s today. Afternoon and evening thunderstorms and scattered showers possible. Lows tonight near 50. We're going to be a little bit warmer. Daytime temperature readings will be reaching the low to mid 80s Saturday. We could be quite warm, 85 to 90 Sunday and into Monday, well into the 80s Tuesday. For the weekend, we cannot rule out some scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. I'm meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Now, there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts, text message your favorite local hosts, call the show, get the latest headlines, and enter contests to win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free.
Presentation of the case was rigged. The judge's management of the case was rigged. The gag order was rigged. And the instructions to the jury were rigged. The whole thing was rigged from beginning to end in hopes of, and to the extent this case and the guilty verdict will matter in November, rigging the presidential election. George Brauchler, you've served as a district attorney. You've prosecuted cases. From your perspective, was this case by Alvin Bragg in Manhattan rigged?
Yeah, that article by Rich Lowry is something people should go out and take a look at because Rich is a super smart guy. To the extent that rigged requires coordination, no, I don't think this was coordinated. And anybody that's heard me talk before, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't think that there are forces in D.C. that are pulling Alvin Bragg's strings, but that there don't need to be. They have a common purpose. The common purpose is that they loathe and detest Donald Trump. And I think that whether it's a conscious decision or subconscious, it seeps into all the decisions that they make. So rigged from the standpoint that I think that Alvin Bragg had a corrupt purpose, absolutely. If rigged is going to be defined as a judge who leaned in the foxhole towards the prosecution instead of the defense, yes, I think that's true. And I've heard some of the talking heads heap praise on this guy. I wasn't in the courtroom. And that's the great shame of this whole thing, too, is New York. I think what we've seen here is two things. One of which is the New York court system is absolutely broken and it is antiquated and it needs to be upgraded quite a bit. But I haven't seen anything come out in terms of some of the rulings that tell me that this guy was trying to be a straight shooter across the board. So if those are the components that make up for something rigged, then yeah, you could say that. But we have judges make mistakes on cases all the time. It's why there's an appellate process. And super smart Chris Murray talked about that too. This thing isn't over for now. This is a battle. It is not the war, but it's a pretty big battle to lose.
Talking to George Brauchler. George, I want to get your response to Alvin Bragg's comments yesterday. He mentioned this about neutrality. Here's Alvin Bragg, press conference following the verdict yesterday.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
That last line, without fear or favor, your read as to whether or not he prosecuted this case without fear or favor.
Listen, man, I've said this from the beginning. Anyone that runs for an office like district attorney, state's attorney, attorney general, that campaigns on the promise to go after a single individual, from that moment forward, the idea of fear or favor now becomes fear, favor, or disfavor. And they have targeted this guy from the beginning. And everyone that's listened to this show before, back before it was really awesome when you guys took over, those handful of people know that I'm not a Trump Kool-Aid drinker. I haven't been a MAGA dude. I haven't been a Trump guy. But I have no doubt in my mind that this case was unique, not because of Donald Trump's conduct, but because of how the district attorney's office approached him and went after him. This notion that Alvin Bragg says that, hey, this is how we do it all the time, that's not true and it's not fair, because I want them to point to all of the other political officials out there that they have targeted with this same kind of enhanced misdemeanor becomes a felony because they let the sands run through the hourglass. I don't believe a word that he says at this point. He, Letitia James, Fonnie Willis, they all campaigned on Get Trump. From that moment forward, you simply cannot trust any decision they make about Donald Trump.
George Brauchler, have you ever campaigned on the promise that you're going to prosecute a particular individual?
Never one single time. It would be anathema to the idea of justice. Now, have I campaigned on the idea that, hey, I've said this, I think I said this on your show, you come into the 23rd Judicial District and attempt to victimize us, you should expect to go to jail. That's not quite the same thing. That's talking about conduct, not about an individual. When I ran, and I should say this unsuccessfully, for Attorney General against Phil campaigned on, if you elect me, I will sue all the opioid makers. I thought that was reckless because, one, we're not in a position to know all the evidence that's out there, but you don't campaign encouraging voters to vote for you on the promise to wield this awesome governmental power against a single entity. That's just not right.
George Brauchler, candidate for district attorney in Colorado's 23rd Judicial District. George, last night, here's my gut reaction watching all this. And I wrote it on my blog. If you go to jeffhunt.com, you can read it there. Another American institution falls to the radical left. To your point, what you were just talking about, I look at this as the politicization of the justice system. Everything that Bragg mentioned. I mean, going after, bragging, I've sued Donald Trump 100 times. And if you put me in office, I'll continue to go after him and I'll use all the resources of the state to go after political opponents. So what irks me, and I'm a Donald Trump fan, but I don't think he's the savior. I think he's the right guy to lead this country moving forward. But what irks me about all this is now you're taking our generally trusted neutral institution and you're politicizing it to go after your opponents. I don't like that. Is that your read on what's happening here?
This was my point. I wrote a column for the Gazette that woulda, coulda, shoulda been published today, but we ended up agreeing to pull it because it became irrelevant after the verdict. And it was premised on the idea that if the perception of the American criminal justice system is going to survive this political cycle, Donald Trump must be acquitted. And it has nothing to do with an analysis of whether or not the facts that are there add up to the law. It has nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the stuff you and I have been talking about, and you and Billy have been talking about for weeks now. And that is all those other pieces that go into the process that up until this moment in time, we sort of took for granted wouldn't get there. The idea that politics would bleed into the courtroom, the most you would think of before this would be something like, well, I think this person is going to trial on this case because it's a high profile case and they're trying to elevate their profile for political gain. That's generally as close as you would get. There are politicians who have been prosecuted. But this is probably the first time I think a significant chunk of American voters can sit back and look and with great credibility, look at this and say, this was a completely politicized system with an intended political outcome, and they achieved it. And that is damning to a system that is predicated on trust. We trust that convictions matter because we trust the system that generates them. If we lose trust in those generated in that system, then how do we trust the felony convictions? How do we trust them beyond this? It really kind of pisses me off, Jeff, because I have spent 30 years of my life believing in this system, not because it's flawless, not because it can't be improved, but because it was the simple, best system that we had on the planet Earth to try to achieve something that is so hard to define, and that's justice. And this case has kind of punched that right in the junk.
Now, I want to follow up a little bit on that. George Brauchler, candidate for Judicial District 23, joining Jeff and Bill. I understand your critique of the prosecution, but even if Alan Bragg ran on it, wouldn't he have to find the crimes that Trump did and then take them to grand jury and then also put them in front of a judge and a jury that Donald Trump gets to help pick? What I have a difficulty with is this conclusion that our judicial system is now completely and totally broken and politicized. What I'm hearing is I dislike the result, so now I'm going to make an excuse rather than I've come to a conclusion based on what I've seen, and this is obviously broken.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I don't want anyone to hear me say I think the system is ruined and we can't trust anything. When I say the system got punched in the junk, that's just it, man. It's a blow, and it's something we're going to have to deal with moving forward, because I think it gives permission to both sides, independent of party or ideology, to now look at lawfare as a legitimate use of the criminal justice system. And I think that's appalling, and I think that hurts us quite a bit. You're right, Billy, that they had to follow the rules and the process and the procedure, and there was a judge and all this stuff. And I don't want anyone to hear me say I'm critical of the jury either. I absolutely think the jury did what it was charged to do. I'm not going to accuse them of corruption. The defense helped pick them. That's it. But they're also only as good as the evidence they were allowed to hear and the instructions that they were given. And that's something else, I think Chris talked about this once. That's also part of the process, Billy, is this is a system that's so broken. Not only do we not get to see inside, you and I don't get to judge the credibility of the witnesses or the presentation of the evidence or the conduct of the judge. We don't get to do that. We have to rely on other people. But more than that, jurors there are read 54 convoluted instructions in a first of its kind case, and then told, hope you took good notes, because we're not going to give you a copy of this.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
weird.
They're also told, by the way, you don't need to have unanimity on the ultimate crime that elevated this from the time-limited misdemeanor to a felony. So those things, those give me grave concern. Not because I think the system is forever lost or forever damaged, but man, this is a blow. And I think it just creates a historic precedent that we're going to look back on and say, well, we did it in the Trump case. We did it in the Trump case.
I can see that, George. Now, I want to go after that, the jury instructions just for a second, as far as the unanimities, because I hear that being brought up a lot. And again, I'm not the law talking guy. And what I'm curious about, thank you, appreciate that. What I'm curious about is inside of other cases, let's say that it is a fraud case like a Ponzi scheme, the jury could have a difference of opinion based on where along the line the defendant committed crimes in order to facilitate the Ponzi scheme. They can have a disagreement there, but they all can come to the conclusion that, yes, this was a Ponzi scheme. Yes, this is fraud. Aren't those jury's instructions similar? Doesn't that happen all the time, that jurors can find things being crimes and other people not, but yet come to a unanimous conclusion?
Well, that remains to be seen, man. That's a fair analogy to a separate set of crimes. I think that's a fair analogy, but in this particular case, I think the problem here is that nobody on the planet Earth has ever been told what that other crime is that they're specifically alleging. It has always been couched in terms of an attempt to influence the presidential election. That's not a crime. Or some federal election commission violation that they didn't even seek. I think it's tough. I think there's something that we have called crimes of violence in Colorado, and it's not a perfect analogy. I'm not suggesting this is a perfect analogy, but crime of violence can occur in a couple different ways, one of which is the use of a weapon or causing serious bodily injury. And you would never give an instruction to the jury that says, if you find either one of these things, and we don't care if 6 of you think it's a deadly weapon and 6 of you think it's serious bodily injury, it doesn't matter. As long as you think something existed there, we're going to punch this guy in the face with crime of violence. You make them find unanimously what that factor is, what that thing. This feels to me like that kind of an element. Like you have got to find what that specific crime was that you're alleging this guy. And the reason for that is pretty simple when it comes to due process. How do you defend against the very vague allegation that there was some other criminal purpose, that there was some other unclaimed, unspecified charge that was out there. That makes it impossible for any American to defend themselves. And I think that's where it's going to run into trouble in the appellate courts.
Talking with George Brauchler, he's a candidate for Judicial District 23 district attorney. And I want to get your thoughts in response to Alvin Bragg on these legal theories. Here's Alvin Bragg yesterday.
We now have a federal court decision ruling on the legal theories. We had a state court decision on the omnibus motions. But most importantly, today we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records. Thank you.
So that's the conclusion of Alvin Bragg's press conference yesterday. He goes, look, I understand it was vague, but we did the legal theories. The federal judicial systems ruled on this. The states ruled on it. And now the people have ruled on it. Is it clear?
I don't think it's clear yet, and it won't be until an appellate court gets the full package here of decisions that Marshawn made in the conduct of the trial. And that's what really this is going to become, is the appeal is a referendum on the decisions the judge made about the evidence and the law. And I don't think this is a done deal yet. We'll see what the appellate courts say, but not anytime soon, and certainly not before November.
It's going to be fascinating to watch all this. Chris Murray said that there is a scenario where he gets elected and he still owes the state time in prison, and that may have to take place after he's elected. George, I want to go back to this notion of now we're going to be using the courts to go after one another in political fights. That's part of my concern, too, is now we're opening and we've crossed a Rubicon we're not going to be able to go back from. We did this with Supreme Court justices, right? Prior to Robert Bork, it was relatively unknown, unwatched system of nominating Supreme Court justices where people are like, okay, well, whatever, he's okay. But now it's like nuclear war. You've watched Republican attorneys get drugged before these bar analysis organizations to try to strip them of their rights to practice law, the kind of useful lawfare there, now going after criminal charges of political opponents. Are we going to see from here on out in America efforts on both sides, not just Democrats, but on both sides, to use the district attorney's office to criminally prosecute political opponents, to dive into their personal lives, to go through business records, to try to find anything they possibly can, that speeding ticket from 25 years ago, or falsification of business records in this case, to now utilize the legal system? Have we crossed a Rubicon we're not going to be able to get back over?
That is the $10 million question. I'm going to say, and this is maybe more hope than prediction, that that's not going to happen, and here's why. The entire political world changed because of one guy, Donald Trump. We've never seen anybody, any force of political nature like Donald Trump before, and my guess is we won't again for a long, long time. So it seems like the rules have changed everywhere because of this guy. And that now has shown up in this court system with these prosecutions. He has become such a unique individual that and such a threat to some ideologies and the momentum that a certain ideology wants to have in America, that they're willing to bend and break rules to try to make an example of this guy or scuttle his ability to get elected. And by the way, not a coordinated effort. I do not believe that. I just believe that individuals can hate this guy and act accordingly. But if they all do it at the same time, it has sort of this cumulative effect. But my point is this: when Donald Trump goes, and he's got to go, that's just the way nature works, I think a lot of this settles back down. Now, the precedent is there. It's always going to be something that people can refer back to and say, well, hey, you guys did it to our guy back with Donald Trump. But I really believe that when this guy moves on from politics, from the public eye, a lot of this stuff doesn't get completely reset, but settles down. That's my hope.
George, you don't think Colangelo is the connection between the Biden administration and the Alvin Bragg prosecution?
I don't. I mean, and listen, I say that because, do I think Jenna Griswold is on the phone with Kamala Harris scheming on how to keep Trump off the ballot? No, I think she's capable of doing that all by herself. Do I think it is absolutely noteworthy and I think appalling that Fani Willis and her lover/co-counsel would travel to the White House to meet with? Absolutely. It's appalling on both sides. But do I think there's a coordinated effort here like Alvin, make this happen? No, I don't think that's it.
Now, George, I want to kind of jump back in time because we were talking, George Brauchler, candidate for Judicial District 23, on the phone with Jeff and Bill. We were talking about the idea that the judicial system is broken, and now we're going to have these political prosecutions, that this somehow has cut the ribbon, that this is everything, and it's all based on what Biden and the Department of Justice has done. I want to jump back into the Wayback Machine right around 2015. And when Donald Trump was campaigning, there was a chant in the audience from Trump supporters about his political opponent. And he made a promise about his political opponent. Do you remember the chant, and do you remember what the promise was?
I think it was hug her up.
I think so. That may be it. Yeah. That's the problem I have with this assumption that now the Biden Department of Justice has done this, because I was alive and watching the rallies in 2015 when Trump fans were chanting, lock her up, and he was promising to sick the DOJ on his political opponent. I look at this and go, what do you mean? How come it's now? I disagree with the timeline on how this is this narrative, because this has happened before what happened with Donald Trump in New York.
Yeah, but Billy, to be fair, man, and I agree with you that whole thing was wrong when it happened. Trump should never say anything about going after political rivals, but he didn't, right? Like, there was no prosecution of Hillary Clinton. That's the difference. He says a bunch of things he shouldn't have said, maybe for political gain, it doesn't matter, but he doesn't do it. And now it's happened. But I also say this, the Biden prosecutions here of the DOJ, if Trump gets elected, I think he's going to make those things go away. I worry about that decision too. Okay. I worry about that decision because I do think that Mar-a-Lago case has legitimate merit to it. Should it result in a felony conviction in prison? No. But that is the least political one, in my opinion, having read everything you can read on this. That's the least political one of those prosecutions. The rest of them, they're all tainted. They're all damaged in one way or another. But Trump didn't go after Hillary Clinton. What do we say about that?
Talking with George Brauchler. George, the biggest question we've got on the text message line today is whether or not you will vote for Donald Trump now that he's been convicted of a felony.
Pass. No, thanks for having me on, guys. This has been, as always, a fantastic
the phone is breaking up. I have no idea. I'm going through a tunnel. Yes.
Listen, I knew this was going to come up. That's why we've been talking about it for years now. This one is really a tough one for me. I spent a lot of time laying in bed last night thinking to myself, now what, man? Now what? And so part of the analysis for me has to be, one, I think we should now adopt the Democrats' move towards ban the box. You know what I mean? Like when a convicted felon goes to apply for a job, we don't even ask them. Let's ban the box for president of the United States. I think the real answer here, though, is that I have to presuppose that the generation of that felony passes some real litmus test things for me. And one is it a felony that is largely recognized just about everywhere? A murder, a rape, a robbery, a burglary, some sort of white collar crime, a theft. Is it that kind of a felony? Two, I have to presuppose that the process was just, even if I disagree with the outcome. Was the process the product of a just prosecution? And is it final? None of those things are true in this particular case. I really don't believe that the motivations were to seek justice. I believe they were political. I believe the charge itself is political. By definition, it's political. One of the accusations was it was an attempt to corrupt an election. And this kind of a charge, it was a misdemeanor that they origamied into a felony. Had they prosecuted him the way it should have been prosecuted back when it was still alive, it would have been misdemeanors. I am not a Donald Trump is my political Jesus guy. You guys all know that. But in this crappy binary process where I have to choose between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I'm still committed to the path that is least destructive for America, and that is not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
So George Brauchler will be supporting Donald Trump this November.
I don't feel like I have any other legitimate choice here. Now, by the way, if it had been the conviction in the Mar-a-Lago case with the documents that he refused to turn over and obfuscated his own, that one would give me pause. That one would give me greater pause, because that to me feels like a legitimate prosecution substantively. This one, he's the only dude I can think of ever to have been prosecuted in this way on this issue at this time for a political purpose. I don't think I can treat that like rape, robbery, murder, white collar. I don't think I can treat it like that. But by the way, damn everybody involved for putting me in this position.
George Brauchler, he's a DA candidate in Judicial District 23, the only guy who's actually prosecuted people that can provide an analysis of what happened yesterday in the Manhattan Alvin Bragg verdict. George, I really appreciate your expertise. I thank you for coming on and answering these hard questions and guiding us through this very complicated moment in American history. Thanks so much, George, for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Is that it then? No more questions? You're just cutting me off and sending me away with that last little bit of...
Well, we'll ask Dagna to come on, but she continues to ignore us.
Yeah.
So.
She has other priorities.
Same. Except on Facebook. I've been blocked on her Facebook, so I have to have people screenshot what she vomits up about me and send it to me and say, "Hey, look at this." That's another interview. We'll talk about.
Oh yeah, we'll have to do
that. George Brauchler, DA candidate, Judicial District 23, has prosecuted the bad guys before and has provided excellent analysis on what happened yesterday. Really appreciate his time. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Ron Greeley, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. Wow, what a morning, right, guys? Holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just in awe. And boy, does George make me scratch my head a lot of times. Especially the question as far as was this rigged? He knows it was rigged. I think for political reasons, he cannot say it was rigged because everything he was saying leaned towards rigged.
George, George said it was rigged. He agreed with the National Review article.
No, because he said because you'd have to have everybody colluding together.
Oh, the collusion. No. He doesn't believe, that Joe Biden is sending text messages to Alvin Bragg, but he, in the analysis of, was the jury pool rigged? It was the judge's treatment of Trump rigged? He seemed to agree with that National Review article that it was.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. I guess I'm going to have to go back and listen to it, because I think in the very beginning, I thought he said no. He says our judicial system's better than that, but I could be wrong. But right now, the way that this whole thing is, when people are talking about, he was judged by 12 peers. Have you guys ever seen that movie, Batman Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah, right. With the show trials, and then they push them out on the ice. Yeah, exactly.
That judicial system reminds me of what's going on right now. I mean, it's
to
like,
be fair,
hey,
Ron, that is a movie, though. To be fair, tell me why you think it's rigged. Walk me through what you've seen that says this trial is rigged. How do you come to that conclusion?
You know how many movies are based off of reality, and whether it's even a cartoon like The Simpsons? So as far as the way it's rigged, when you have 12 people, they asked to have a change of venue, and that was not granted. Why would you not? Everybody in that area is biased towards Trump. That goes back to The Dark Knight Rises.
So Ron, hang on a second.
Ron, get a fair trial.
Where do you take it then? If you're not going to get a fair trial because people are going to be biased against Trump, where do you take it? Because you can't then by the same argument, you can't take it to a red county, because then you have people that are biased towards Trump. So if that is your conclusion, you've put yourself in a box. It's Schrodinger's cat. You can't answer the question. The problem,
Billy, I don't think you like the answer.
No,
because
it's not that I don't like it. I disagree.
When you have They didn't even know what the charge was.
You're avoiding
Even
my question,
in closing,
sir. You're avoiding
they
my
didn't
question,
know.
Ron. Where do you move the trial to then?
Oh, I thought we were still on the first question as far as how was it rigged.
Yeah, let's do this. Where do you move the trial to?
Well, you're going to have to try to find a state that's, somewhat neutral.
But hold on a sec, sir. Hold on. You can't necessarily move a trial outside of its jurisdiction. That's why Jack Smith had to charge in Florida. He couldn't charge in D.C. because the crime didn't happen in D.C. The crime happened in Florida. It's a state crime. They have to move it inside of New York, anywhere in that state. They can't move it outside the state.
Can you move it to the Bronx?
They possibly could. I don't know. I mean, they probably could get a venue change there. But again, what we're looking for.
I think by that showing of when he was in the Bronx, I think that's going to show that he may have a chance, not that he will. New York is corrupt. Everybody knows that. That's why they're losing so much business. That's why so many people are leaving New York.
Ron, I agree with you on that. Ron Greeley, we're just out of time. Coming up next, Heidi Ganahl is going to respond. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill. We're getting reactions from yesterday's historic 34-count guilty verdict regarding Donald Trump and the Manhattan campaign derailment, as Blake calls it, trial taking place there. Heidi Ganahl, friend of the show. If you remember, Heidi was the Republican nominee for governor during the last election, and she's now the president of Rocky Mountain Voice. Heidi, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill show.
Well, good morning, Jeff. It's quite a day. I woke up with a lot of thoughts in this mind.
Lay into us. What are you thinking about what happened yesterday to Donald Trump?
Well, I'm really ticked off. I'm really sad. I'm really just shocked, to be honest, but not shocked, because they've had this all played out, gamed out, and they have more to come. So I don't want anybody to be naive that this is just, wow, this happened so organically. And it was, the jury making a good decision and, all the people doing the right things. BS. So what we have to do as conservatives is act. We can't sit around and post on social media and be sad and be upset. We have to act. And so I got up this morning at like 5 a.m. and figured out what are the 3 things that we can do to actually change the election this fall, to actually win. And I'll tell you when the time is right.
No, I would love to hear them. And I appreciate the hope, because there's the gut punch that happened yesterday because of what's happening in the election, for those of us concerned about the direction of the judicial system in this nation as well, and the kind of the politicization. And it kind of feels like a republic is crumbling. That was the feeling I had last night, is, gosh, this just continues. So we need a little hope, Heidi. What do you got for us? What are the 3 things we should be doing?
All right. There's 3 things that are easy, that don't require you to trust any other groups or, get along with other people. It's all about taking action as an individual, which we're all about individual rights. Download the Turning Point Action app, download the Early Vote Action app, and pick a local group. Pick whatever group you like that cares about the issues you care about. There's lots of them. I'm happy to help. If you email info@rockymountainvoice.com, we'll hook you up with somebody, and get busy. These 2 apps let you do 2 things. Early Vote Action is Scott Pressler's app. It helps you register voters. And he's got a really easy way to do that. You can write postcards, you can make calls, you can text, and you don't have to do it per se in Colorado. There's key elections in states around the country that you can pick, like Pennsylvania, to help register voters and get people excited about the election. Turning Point's app actually targets low propensity Republican voters. So voters who didn't maybe necessarily turn out in the last couple of elections, we need to get them activated. So number 1, you're registering new voters. Number 2, you're activating existing voters. And of course, number 3, subscribe to RockyMountainVoice.com. It's free. We're going to start writing about how to take action. I'm going to try and write a few times a week about things that you can actually do to make a difference, like joining your Canvas board, becoming an election judge, a poll watcher, registering voters, adopting young groups like Turning Point USA. They have 17 college chapters and 24 high school chapters across Colorado that you can volunteer with and help them activate.
Heidi Ganahl, I appreciate the optimism and encouraging action, because that's what it's going to take, especially this November. The big verdict, right, is going to come in November. I got a question for you about the last gubernatorial race. I wrote about this yesterday, this kind of notion of Machiavellian viciousness on the radical left to do anything they can to win. Did you face that when you were running for governor in Colorado?
Oh my goodness, yes. Between the coordinated action of the liberal media and the money that Jared Polis put in, upwards of $33 million to win that election. And most of it came in the final weeks with just a barrage of lying ads and flyers saying I was going to put women and doctors in jail. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And they have the money, they have the troops. So they had over 4,000 paid people out ballot harvesting. They did daily polling, so they knew exactly what to say to the voters, and then used that money to send those messages out on the airwaves, on the TV and flyers in your mailbox. And then, they tracked exactly who had not voted. So they track every day who's still out there that they want to vote that hasn't. And that's how they use that army and the targeted advertising to get those folks to vote. So I tell people, in Colorado, they are so well organized and so well funded. If you do believe they cheated, I don't even think they need to. They have it so wrapped up, tied up, and so much money invested that they've been working on these systems for 10 years. So it's going to take a while to unravel. But what we can do right now is register voters and get Republicans to actually vote. We only had a 76% turnout in that election. Every Republican has to vote, and we have to get new voters to vote our way as well.
Talking with Heidi Ganahl. Heidi, you are a white, suburban, college-educated woman. You are like the primary demographic that doesn't like Donald Trump. Do you think this conviction is going to lean women away from Donald Trump, or are they going to be angry about what the left is doing to our judicial system?
Well, if they're paying attention, they'll be very angry and upset, because what happened to Donald Trump yesterday can happen to any of them and their children. And so I hope they're paying attention. But regardless, we can get young people who are upset about what's happening with the economy and affordable housing and crime here in Colorado. They've lost their opportunity. They've lost their American dream. And when Donald Trump was in office, he revived that American dream. Our economy was humming, so much opportunity. We can have school choice. We can have, unregulated, opportunity to change this country for the better. Like, the regulations and the taxes are drowning us right now as small business owners. There's so much that was better under Donald Trump. And if they take a few minutes to pay attention to the wide contrast between what's happening under Joe Biden and what happened on Donald Trump, they'll vote that way. But right now, I would say we focus on getting our own people to turn out. We focus on young people who are very frustrated about what's happening. And then we focus on minorities. They are very upset about what's happening to Donald Trump and what's happening to with inflation. They can't afford to, rent a house or survive, buy groceries. So there's lots of folks out there who are ready to vote a different way. Let's focus on those.
I was watching the debate last night, the Congressional District 4 debate, and the first question, and this is going to be the question that comes from the media now constantly: are you willing to support a convicted felon? You're also a mother, and I'm a father. What do we say to our kids in the midst of this? We're supporting a convicted felon?
I have a lot to say about that. Most people are awake to what happened. I believe a lot of folks had faith that the system would work and that this sham trial would show itself, and that one juror at least would be strong and brave and do the right thing. That didn't happen. So I think this has shaken people to their core, and they understand that Joe Biden and his family have done horrible things and taken advantage of our country in ways that should put them in jail. So I think Americans care deeply about fairness. They want what's fair. And right now, what's happening is not fair. So what I would suggest is that people are waking up to what's happened, and they're going to vote differently because of that. If you watched Twitter last night, my goodness, the number of Democrats and liberals who are saying, I don't like Donald Trump, but I'm voting for him because this has gone too far.
Heidi Ganahl, she's the president of Rocky Mountain Voice. You can visit her website, RockyMountainVoice.com. That's RockyMountainVoice.com. Thank you so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show, giving us your perspective on the sham trial that happened yesterday. I really appreciate your leadership in the state, and I think you should make another run at the Gov.
We got a lot of stuff to fix here, which we're working on with the Road to Red Project and Rocky Mountain Voice. But Jeff, I haven't given up, and I hope no one else does. Yeah. And we've got to take action. So download those apps, Turning Point Action, Early Vote Action, and sign up for Rocky Mountain Voice. It's free, and we'll drop some great news into your email box a few times a week that will help you take action, and we'll win back this state, and we'll continue to fight for America.
RockyMountainVoice.com. Thank you so much, Heidi Ganahl. Folks, I want to talk to you about the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun, but the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture. And I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture continue improving the efficiency of their irrigation systems and adopting farming practices that help crops use less water to grow. They're planting drought-resistant varieties, and they're leading talks with state policymakers about how to preserve water supplies when we have good years like this last one. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join them. All right, coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, Dave Williams and Lauren Boebert react to the verdict yesterday in the Trump Manhattan case. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, and Lauren Boebert, congresswoman from Colorado Congressional District 3, join us to give their reaction to what happened yesterday. Give us a call as well, 303-696-1971. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Eight a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. It is Friday, May 31st, and you have tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, center, and crazy. Following up on a historic day yesterday, Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in the sham trial that took place in New York City by Alvin Bragg. We're going to get reaction here in just a second from the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, David Williams. But first, the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Morning, Jeff and Billy. 54 and cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the upper 70s this afternoon. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
This was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Travesty of justice. Misdemeanors rose to felonies in Judge Mersham's courtroom. And Thursday, the former president lost. Longtime DA and former host of this show, George Brauchler, on with the fellas last hour. Was this case rigged?
To the extent that rigged requires coordination, no. I don't think this was coordinated. And anybody that's heard me talk before, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't think that there are forces in D.C. that are pulling Alvin Bragg's strings, but that there don't need to be. They have a common purpose. The common purpose is that they loathe and detest Donald Trump. And I think that whether it's a conscious decision or subconscious, it seeps into all the decisions that they make. Rigged from the standpoint that I think that Alvin Bragg had a corrupt purpose, absolutely.
So will Brauchler vote for Trump?
Pass. No, thanks for having me on, guys. This has been, as always, a fantastic
the phone is breaking up.
But in this crappy binary process where I have to choose between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I'm still committed to the path that is least destructive for America, and that is not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't feel like I have any other legitimate choice here.
And attorney Chris Murray on the show again. He said that he was surprised with the verdict, but it's not over.
In order to turn this from falsification of business records by itself in New York, that's a misdemeanor. And it comes with almost no possibility for jail time. It's basically a fine. It's never prosecuted. The Class C felonies, which President Trump was convicted of, are falsification of business records in order to cover up another criminal activity. And I think that's where this case likely gets overturned on appeal.
Barricades are set up outside Trump Tower, and he's getting ready to speak to the press once again in Manhattan. ESPN confirming that the older brother of Nugget star Aaron Gordon, Drew Gordon, died in a car crash on Thursday. He was 33. The crash occurred in Portland, and the specifics of the crash are unclear as this investigation is underway. Severe thunderstorms dropped large destructive hail last night, tennis ball-sized hail, pummeled cars, houses, and businesses, leaving shattered windows and damaged siding. Denver, North Glen, Thornton, Commerce City, and Aurora hit the hardest.
The Western Conference champions are the Dallas Mavericks. They're going to the NBA Finals. They'll take on the Boston Celtics.
Luka Doncic, 10 3-pointers, 36 points, and the Mavs headed to the NBA Finals, take on the Celtics once again. They defeated the T-Wolves 124-103 in Game 5 Western Conference Finals. And the Rockies trying to play well. Once again, they won 2 of 3 against Cleveland, and they are in Southern California to take on the LA Dodgers as they start a 3-game series today. 50 in Castle Pines, 53 in North Glen, and 54 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. It's Friday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The 710 5-day forecast calls for very typical weather for this time of year through the weekend. Temperatures will be in the 70s today. Afternoon and evening thunderstorms and scattered showers possible. Lows tonight near 50. We're going to be a little bit warmer. Daytime temperature readings will be reaching the low to mid 80s Saturday. We could be quite warm, 85 to 90 Sunday and into Monday, well into the 80s Tuesday. For the weekend, we cannot rule out some scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. I'm meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Absolutely jam-packed fire show today. We've heard from Chris Murray. We've heard from George Brauchler. We've heard from Heidi Ganahl. And now we're going to hear from the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, Dave Williams. Dave, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. You watched the verdict come in yesterday. What was your first reaction?
On the one hand, it's shocking because you don't expect this type of behavior in America. This is the stuff you see in dictatorships or banana republics. But on the other hand, it's not that terribly surprising. This was a preordained outcome, and it was orchestrated. It was rigged. I respect, George for his opinion, but I guarantee you right now this was coordinated. But even if it wasn't coordinated, they all know their marching order, the Democrats, they all know their marching orders that Joe Biden is losing this election. So by hook or by crook, they're going to do whatever they can to defeat President Trump, to include using lawfare and rigging the American legal system.
Now, Colorado's a unique state, Dave Williams. We've been getting bluer and bluer and bluer. How does what happened yesterday affect the upcoming November election in the state of Colorado?
I think it has an even greater effect or backlash, if you will, than what they tried to do in the Colorado Supreme Court by kicking Donald Trump off the ballot. When we saw that happen with the sham 14th Amendment hearing, we saw an uptick in donations and volunteerism and activism for Donald Trump, not only for his campaign, but in the party. This is going to kick it up to an even higher level because now we're actually talking about potential jail time or prison time. I hope it doesn't go that far, but the American people and Coloradans are seeing this for what it is. It is a sham. It is a farce. It's something that you just don't do in America. You don't weaponize the legal system against your political opponent. You settle your differences at the ballot box, not in the kangaroo court. So it's gonna be a backlash. I think swing voters are gonna just simply want to vote for Trump so that they can bring balance back to this. I mean, it's not even about Trump anymore. It's about what the Democrats are doing to ruin this country so that they can maintain power. And it's not going to fly with the voters.
Yeah, I saw a lot of response on Twitter yesterday that people said, I don't even like Donald Trump, but I hate the direction that this administration, the Biden administration, the Democrats are taking this country. I don't like it. I'm going to support Donald Trump. But Dave Williams, the first question out of Kyle Clark's mouth yesterday to the Congressional District 4 Republican primary was, who is willing to vote for a convicted felon? Are you still willing to support Donald Trump that he's a convicted felon? Every Republican is going to have to answer that question moving forward because of this sham trial. How should Republicans respond to that question?
Well, they should definitely push back against Kyle Clark or reporters like him, because the fact that Kyle Clark can say that or ask that question with a straight face tells you everything you need to know about how crooked journalists are. The appropriate answer is, look, the real crook is in the White House currently, and we need to get him out. And everyone knows that come November 5th, the American people are going to give the true verdict and vindicate Trump. So yeah, every Republican needs to vote for Donald Trump, and we need to convince as many Americans to do the same, because this isn't merely about the Republican versus the Democrat. Our country is at stake because we are looking at a system now that is going to be weaponized against all Americans. If they can do this to a former president on trumped up trials, no pun intended, then they can do it to any American. And that's scary.
Well, my response would have been, in that case, like, what's the alternative? A crackpot despot type of leader in this country that is driving our country to become a third world banana republic? That's the alternative. Convicted felon, convicted in a show trial, or a despot whose abortion policies have led to the murder of 60 million innocent children in this country? Are you kidding me? That's the first question that these guys come at. But it's going to be a challenge for Republicans, because the media, that is especially a leftist media, is going to use this. I mean, we're the law and order party. We embrace law and order, and they're going to try to use it against this. Is this indicative of a larger effort by the left to corrupt the judicial system in the United States?
100%. I mean, they've been doing this for years now. I mean, there is a double standard here, and to put a finer point on it, I mean, you go back to 2020. I remember after the George Floyd riots, right? You had Soros-backed DAs refusing to prosecute actual criminals. You had Kamala Harris for God's sake, raising money to bail out people that had destroyed public property or harmed other citizens. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make this country worse so that they can ultimately take more power. And that's going to involve punishing law-abiding citizens and then enabling criminals. This is another example of that. They're going to, by hook or by crook, by corrupting the system, whatever you want to parse it as or call it, they're going to do whatever they can to defeat their political opponents so that they can maintain power. And when you start seeing that in your country, look out. You need to do everything you can to stop it because tyranny is coming.
Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party and candidate for Congressional District 5, joining Jeff and Bill this morning. I want to follow up on the phrase that Jeff used a moment ago, the law and order party. Talk to me, and how do you address some of those middle-of-the-road squishy voters with the message of law and order when your party's presumptive nominee is a convicted felon? It's going to be hard, in my opinion, to make the case that we're so worried about the illegal immigrants, and we're so worried about the crime happening in our cities, and we're so worried about this, but we're going to run a felon as our presidential candidate. I understand the conclusion that this is a sham trial, but that conclusion may not be shared by those squishy middle voters that you need to put Trump back in the White House. How does this messaging work that you're the law and order party with a felon as your standard bearer?
I mean, it's not true. And I think most Americans are going to look at this and say he's not really a convicted felon. You got to remember, he was convicted, quote unquote, with a Democrat DA, a very conflicted Democrat judge, and from a jury, not of his peers, but of overwhelming, Democrats. I mean, they tried everything to move the venue or to object and move for dismissals because of the lack of evidence or the inability to actually make a coherent case here, but it didn't matter. And I think most Americans see this for what it is. Yeah, they can technically call him a convicted felon for the time being, but I don't think any Americans actually buying this.
But I'm not certain about that one. And part of because Donald Trump did have a defense team. He was involved in picking the jury. He was allowed time to present a defense and call witnesses. Some were allowed, some weren't. But I have a difficulty with this presupposition that I'm hearing in much of conservative media that this is already, we all know that this was a sham trial. No, that is not the opinion of a significant portion of America. They don't believe that. So the question that I have is, if they don't share your conclusion, how in the heck do you persuade them that you're the law and order party by running a felon? Isn't this hurting the message more than it helps?
The beauty of this country is that you don't need to convince 100% of the people. We just need to convince the majority. And when you have people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying exactly what we're saying, then you've lost the plot. Most Americans are going to back us come November 5th, and they're going to give us the true verdict and vindicate Trump.
Talking with Dave Williams, chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, some have said it would be better off for Republicans if Ron DeSantis was the nominee at this point. What's your response to them?
They're dead wrong. One of the things that's going on here is it's galvanizing the Republican base and the Republican Party. It's unifying us in such a way that we haven't seen in a long time. You have people like Ron DeSantis and others that oppose Donald Trump that are now coming to his defense. I mean, if you look on social media, if you look at other news reports, you're seeing people that supported other presidential candidates against Trump now saying, look, come hell or high water, I'm going to crawl through broken glass to vote for Donald Trump and even donate to him. So I think it'd be a mistake to do that. We need to go with Donald Trump. He stood for us. Now we need to stand for him.
I'm interested in your take on the voters of Colorado as it relates to RFK and Biden. I'm trying to figure out where they may lean, because we're a unique state. We're socially libertarian. So, we like our low taxes, but, we've also passed unrestricted abortion up until the moment of birth. We've decriminalized marijuana. You have doctor-assisted suicide. You have all these very progressive social things, but then we tend to be kind of economically conservative. If obviously conservatives are going to go right in for Donald Trump, and I think some independents may lean towards Donald Trump as well, but How do you, the more liberal voter, how do you see them breaking between Joe Biden and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I think it definitely hurts Biden more than it hurts Trump, right? I think when you have someone like RFK on the ballot, he's good on maybe one or two issues, but the vast majority of which he's a hard left candidate. So they're going to go his way if they're dissatisfied with Joe Biden. But even if you step back and look at some of the other third party candidates that are going to be on the ballot, it's going to hurt Joe Biden. And I welcome it as the chair of the Republican Party. Bring it on. Let's have more third party left leaning candidates on that presidential ballot so we can help propel our nominee to victory.
Talking with Dave Williams. Dave, I also want to ask you about Colorado Republican primaries. There's some big ones coming up. Congressional District 8, Congressional District 4, Congressional District 5, and Congressional District 3 as well. All of them have Trump-endorsed candidates or Trump-leaning support, or at least state party-endorsed candidates. Does this conviction yesterday of Donald Trump, 34 felony accounts, how do you think that's going to affect those primaries where Donald Trump has specifically endorsed a Republican primary candidate?
Well, I definitely think that anyone who has the backing of Donald Trump, like myself or Lauren Boebert, we're definitely going to go make the case to Republicans, but even more specifically, Donald Trump supporters, saying, look, he needs the backup in Congress. He needs the help. So please go ahead and vote for us. And I'm sure any other candidate that is a Trump supporter is going to make the case like, hey, we can't have this kind of this kind of corruption going on if Trump gets back into the White House. I mean, remember in 2016, Trump wasn't as successful as he could have been because he didn't have the kind of support that he needed in order to actually drain the swamp. So I think this is a galvanizing opportunity. It's a way to mobilize folks right before the election. I mean, the election's less than 25 days from now. So I think this is certainly an opportunity for people to make the case that, hey, we need to start electing strong Republicans who are going to have the president's back and push the America First agenda. So it's certainly a good opportunity to get the message out and ultimately win that election.
So in your particular case in Congressional District 5, you're running for Congress. Your opponent is Jeff Crank. You think yesterday's decision, 34 felony count conviction, is going to galvanize supporters in Congressional District 5 towards you as opposed to Jeff Crank?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be the natural outcome. I mean, voters are going to support Donald Trump and they're going to want to trust his judgment. And so if you have Donald Trump saying, look, I want you to support Lauren Boebert, I want you to support Dave Williams, they're going to say, yep, you bet, especially after the events of yesterday.
How did it affect the state party last night? Did you see an uptick in donations to the Colorado Republican Party?
We did, but we saw a very big uptick in people wanting to volunteer and get engaged. One of the troubling things about what we're seeing in this country is, the so-called Bidenomics, the problems that we have because of Biden's disastrous economic policies are really, really forcing Americans to tighten the belt, but they want to get engaged. So yeah, there were a good portion of small dollar donors, but I think what's even more encouraging is that we had a lot of people who just want to get on the phones or canvass, knock on doors. They want to do something. These people in their messages said, look, we've never done this before, but we got to do something now. So again, I think the Democrats made a big mistake in going down this road.
Dave Williams, he's a candidate for Congress in Congressional District 5. He currently serves as the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party as well. His website, daveforcolorado.com, if you want to be more involved in what he's doing. Dave, I know you're very busy. The primary election's coming up. Thank you so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show, helping us understand how Republicans look at yesterday's historic verdict against Donald Trump. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with us.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thanks for having me, guys.
Again, Dave Williams, his website, daveforcolorado.com. All right, when we come back, we're going to hear from Lauren Boebert about what she thought about the case as well. I want to talk to you real quick before we do that about Empower Homes and Gay Ribble. We've had Gay in the studio multiple times. Gay Ribble is a wonderful, delightful person, very cheery, kind, happy, and that matters because when you're selling your home, That's an incredibly stressful thing to do. You want a good team that's going to be around you to help get through that. Secondly, Gay Ribble shares our values. We were talking about organizations she supports. She gives back to orphans in the state of Colorado, in part because she was an orphan herself. And those organizations helped her find her forever family. She wants to help current orphans find their forever family, grow up in a great family like she did. So she gives back to the community. Third, and most importantly, she is a pro, right? You're selling your home. We all have family members, friends that are real estate agents. This is a business transaction. You got to get the most for your family that you can. Gay and her experts get their clients an average of $30,000 more. Could you use an extra $30,000? That's precisely why you need Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team. Their exclusive database is filled with over 14,700 pre-screened buyers ready to make a purchase. Take the stress and hassle out of selling your home while getting the best price. Here's an unbeatable offer. Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team will sell your house for 100% of the asking price, or Gay will pay you the difference. It's an offer you simply cannot refuse. Get 100% of your asking price guaranteed with Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team. Reach out to them today, 833-301-SOLD. That's 833-301-SOLD, or go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com. Before we go to a break, let's check in on the phones here. Hugo Centennial, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Hugo.
Hello, guys. I got to tell you, there's been a lot of emotions coming out since mid-afternoon yesterday, but I like what Laura Ingraham said, is get mad, but get motivated. And I think that's going to be the motto for Republicans moving forward. I disagree with a lot of the pushback, especially you, Billy, saying that this thing wasn't rigged is really a far stretch. I mean, we've got a Soros-appointed DA. We've got a judge that is severely compromised. And we have a jury pool that was, let's say, far from Donald Trump's peers.
How did George Soros appoint the DA in New York? Because you said he was appointed by Soros. How did he accomplish that?
No, he's bought. He was bought by Soros. Who do you think funded his campaign?
Oh, so whoever funds the campaign then buys the candidate? Is that your conclusion?
Well, in this particular case and others...
Only this one, though. But Hugo, here's the issue, Hugo, is only this case. Only when you're mad at what happened in the individual, then they're bought. But if anybody else... No, Hugo, I'm asking you for consistency. Your issue was because there's a big donation, they're obviously bought. So what we need to do now is go through both Democrats and Republicans and their top 3 donators. They obviously have purchased that candidate. That is now our conclusion based on your premise. Okay, fair enough. Go forward.
See, this is what you do, Billy. You nitpick about one particular issue instead of looking at the big picture.
Hugo, that part is very important to your premise. You started with the fact that he was appointed by Soros. That was your very first point. Don't talk to me about nitpicking. I'm not nitpicking. I took the very first thing you said and then took it apart. Thank you.
Yeah. You didn't take anything apart, Billy.
Yeah, I did.
That's only in your mind.
No, I did. You didn't. You couldn't convince me that it was. You couldn't show us that they were appointed, and you disagree with your own premise about the fact that he's a donator, then buys him.
You can't be convinced of anything that is anti-Trump. That's the point.
No, I can't be convinced of anything that is made up. You got to stop coming to me with conspiracy theories and pretend stuff.
Yeah, like this trial. All these charges are legitimate, right?
I have been very clear on this. I do not believe they are felonies. Those two, in my mind, are all misdemeanors. Trump should be writing a check. This is a minor infraction. This was in some ways a BS trial because of them stretching it into the felony charges. So I also, hang on, Hugo, hang on. I believe that it was a stretch trial, and I believe that Donald Trump's defense did him a disservice by not arguing that this is an overcharge and by not arguing about the FEC. Because the conclusion in the charges, the secondary charge, is an election campaign violation. And I firmly believe that his defense dropped the ball by not pointing to that and saying, you're being asked to find a conclusion in the law that the FEC says doesn't exist. That should have been the argument.
you've been living under a rock. Do you believe this judge was going to allow anything that was going to be exculpatory for Trump?
Yes.
Give me a break, man.
Yes, he is. Yes,
No.
yes. Yeah,
No, the guy is a Colombian transplant, comes from a country of despots. He needs to be charged, arrested.
All right, here you go. I'm sorry. The idea there that you're saying just because he's an immigrant, now he's somehow corrupt. Come on. I mean, you're talking to me about nitpicking and stretching? Please, appreciate the call, but have a good day. That's just silly.
Bill and Hugo has been waiting to go with you toe to toe for a while.
Yes,
Hugo, I appreciate the call.
And I appreciate him too.
Thanks
and
so
I love
much.
him and his Trump hat. He's a cool dude. He's a really cool dude. We just disagree, man.
He came to the breakfast too, and
yeah.
he's ready to sit in here all day with you.
Oh, I know
we
he
have
is.
a lot of texters that are like, "Give me a moment with Bill."
Oh, a lot of them. A lot of them want to bring baseball backs. That's the thing that scares me sometimes.
Another texter, Jeff in Alaska, is looking forward to having Lauren Boebert on the show.
Oh, that'll be fun. That'll be fun to chat with her.
He would like us to give her his phone number. She's single.
Yes, she is. Yes, it is. And you're an outdoorsman, obviously, in Alaska. You can sit there and say, I want to see the size of my grizzly bear.
Joan says you're too nasty, Bill.
I understand, Joan. I appreciate that. But I find that those comments only happen when I disagree with someone. That if I sat here and said that you're the most wonderfulest, beautifulest audience and that everything that you're saying is absolutely true, then you guys throw flowers. That's fine. But the issue is I'm addressing the truth. And many times, texters just like that call me names. Don't come in and say, Bill, you're wrong about X.
Give us a call.
But we got someone that will. Joe from Arvada's coming
Yeah,
up.
303-696-1971. When we return, Representative Lauren Boebert, you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour in Berlin, I'm Trent Murray, and here are the top stories we're following. Yesterday, the jury in Donald Trump's hush money case found the former president guilty of all charges. But will it impact voters' opinions of him? In New York, Haley Bianco reports.
A new survey found that overall, 2 out of 3 voters have already made up their minds about who they're going to vote for. Most Americans say a guilty verdict in Donald Trump's New York trial is not likely to affect the way they vote in November. 67% of those responding to the poll say a guilty verdict would have no influence on their vote. 17% say it would make them less likely to vote for Trump, but that's balanced by the 15% that say a guilty verdict would make them more likely to cast their ballot for the former president.
And Salem News Channel will carry former President Trump's address this morning live at 11 a.m. Eastern. Chipotle has come out swinging over claims its portion sizes have shrunk. The Mexican fast food giant responding to TikTok users who have been posting what purports to be small serving sizes of burrito bowls, tacos and enchiladas. In a statement, the company says despite the food for all, there have been no changes to portion sizes and that corporate has reinforced proper portioning with store employees. And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Trent Murray in Berlin on Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. On this historic broadcast yesterday, Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 counts in the sham trial that took place in Manhattan by Alvin Bragg. We've been getting feedback all morning. Chris Murray joined us, George Brauchler, Heidi Ganahl, Dave Williams, and we're very honored to have us joining us now, Representative Lauren Boebert. Thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Bill. It's good to be with y'all, but it is a sad day for America. I don't know if I'm mad or depressed or just fired up and ready to go. But what we saw yesterday was a gross miscarriage of justice, and we knew from the beginning that President Trump was not going to get a fair trial by Judge Merchan or in New York City.
Yeah, and it was the very first thing you had to deal with yesterday during this Channel 9 debate. By the way, you did a great job giving and taking, just as good as Kyle Clark was trying to give it. It was fun to watch, but this was the first question. I think this is the first question that every Republican's going to have to deal with between now and November. Are you supporting a convicted felon to be the president of the United States?
Sure as hell I am. I'm absolutely supporting President Trump, and it's not because of the conviction. It's because of what he could do for our country, and he's showing that he does not give up. If he would just go away, all of this would go away. But he's not going anywhere. He understands that we have a country to save. He understands the weaponization of the federal government and that there are some deep, dark, nasty players who are involved in Washington, D.C., and throughout our country. And he is ensuring that he comes back for another 4 years to clean house, to drain the swamp, to get our country prospering again, to secure our borders. And that's why I am voting for him. But I think there's a lot of folks who were on the fence as of yesterday who may have just been shoved over into MAGA camp.
Yeah, when Kyle Clark asked you that question, your hand shot up. You're like the first one to shoot up. You're proud to stand with President Trump through all this. Representative Lauren Boebert, I think you're uniquely qualified to be able to answer this question about the radical left and how they personally attack you. You know, we've talked to lawyers today. We talked with the chairman of the GOP. Because of your leadership, in many ways, the radical left has had a target on you, going after your personal life, diving in, making up things about you, and very similar to the way they've treated Donald Trump. Give us insight into the viciousness of the radical left against their political opponents.
So with all of the attacks that come my way, I mean, that is absolutely nothing new. Sure, Democrats do it, but Republicans do it too. The ones who on our side who do it, I don't think are as ideologically aligned as Jeff and I are, for instance. But, you know, with all of these attacks, it only makes you stronger. People see through these attacks. They understand that when someone is going after you personally with no policy ties, that's all they have. That's why they attack President Trump the way they do. That's why they go after me the way they do, because they cannot they cannot win on actual policy. I have current opponents that I'm not going to attack personally because I understand how fragile the Republican Party is in Colorado, and that we need to do everything we can to strengthen our party and grow our party so we can begin to make effective changes in Colorado. But these opponents have no problem taking cheap shots or mischaracterizing my votes or my actions or talking about clothing, whatever it may be, because they cannot debate me on policy. When I take a stand and refuse to send $9 billion to Hamas, you know, I mean, I have an opponent who criticizes that and tries to say that it's all about Israel. I would love to support Israel. I'm not giving Hamas $9 billion. at the same time. So people see through the attacks. The attacks in my case, and I think in President Trump's case as well, only make us stronger and remind us every day exactly what we're fighting for.
Talking with Lauren Boebert, she's running for Congressional District 4, currently represents Congressional District 3. You've been endorsed by the president in light of the 34-count conviction that took place yesterday against Donald Trump. Does that endorsement help you or hurt you in Congressional District 4?
I'm honored to have President Trump's endorsement. I believe that his endorsement helps all throughout our country. I was honored to be in New York with him in the freezing cold courtroom. I don't know if it was the vibes the jurors and Judge Rashawn were putting off, or they really just wouldn't turn the heat on in there. But you know, I was proud to be there with him in New York, by his side, encouraging him and reminding him how many people in Colorado and throughout our nation are praying for him, who are standing with him, and who understand that this was rigged from the very beginning. This is election interference, period. That is all this is. They have brought the political world into our court system. So I am honored to have President Trump's endorsement. He knows that I will work with him when he is back in the White House and effectively accomplish implementing his policies.
Talking with Lauren Boebert. Lauren, a lot of conservatives were talking about their phones blowing up yesterday after the verdict. What did you see happen to your phone, to your social media networks, even donations happening after the verdict came through?
Yes. So certainly there was an outrage. I mean, I saw an uptick on Twitter for sure. Of course, people are reaching out. I mean, I have probably more than 1,000 people in the 4th District have my personal cell phone number. So certainly people were reaching out to me, praying for the president. I even woke up to more texts this morning. But I also saw WinRed crash. Like, I immediately went to go donate to President Trump's campaign personally. And I couldn't donate anything. WinRed was completely down. And I think there was just such a demand throughout the country of folks wanting to support him and contribute to his campaign.
You're right. Representative Boebert joining Jeff and Bill. She's a candidate as well for CD3 CD4 coming up. She's in CD3 and currently representing the state. You're absolutely right, Lauren, because I watched last night. WinRed crashed. Donald Trump, another website crashed. And there are some web pages you can go behind the scenes and it will show you reports of when servers go down. And there was so much traffic on both those servers, they both crashed last night. That's a really good indication. Now, I want to bring you back to some of the conversation we had at the beginning with Jeff, going back to the debate at Channel 9. Sure. Okay. Now, two questions. Why Channel 9, and what's it like going into the belly of the beast and having to deal with Kyle Clark on a debate? You know what you're walking into. What is that like?
Well, you know, I don't think Jeff and Bill invited us all for a debate in studio, but
nice one. Good job.
We did accept that debate with 9 News. Look, I guess my new rule is I will interview with Kyle Clark. I'll give him a moment every 5 years. So, you know, I'll see him in 2029 for the next one. But, you know, we went there and it was actually, I thought the debate itself was structured very well. I appreciated that they allowed candidates to interact with one another. Everywhere else we've been, it's, you know, the rules have been very strict about no interacting, no crosstalk. And so I did like the setup of the debate. You know, of course, Kyle is going to be Kyle and try to stop you when he feels that you've said what he wanted only without, you know, any other explanation or just trying to mischaracterize. For instance, he asked everyone if they would have voted the way I did to object to the certification of the Electoral College results. And Jeff, Bill, every one of my opponents said last night that they would have voted to certify the election. Now, Kyle calls it overturning the election and, you know, wouldn't make a point of clarification. But, you know, he was kind of running the show. But I stand by that vote to object to those Electoral College certificates. And every single one of my opponents said they would have certified that there was no election interference and that the 2020 election was just fine.
Talking with Lauren Boebert. Lauren, I want to kind of drill down on this. The way Republicans have to respond in the new age of politics, you have faced the personal, vicious attacks organized against you by organizations like American Muckrakers, and you've had to fight back legally. You've had to challenge them in court and put them on their heels. Is this the new day in American politics where these battles are going to take place in courtrooms?
I sure hope that that's not where we are ultimately getting to, but I mean, it is a part of it. I've had legal battles every step of the way. I had, a woman threaten me on Twitter and make some pretty nasty comments, a sitting state collar representative. And I blocked her on Twitter on my campaign account, and that ended up in court. There are malicious lies that are told about me and my family. And I have folks that I'm currently in the middle of a lawsuit with, and so I hope that that's not where we're going in America, because the judicial system is already being politicized, it's already being weaponized, and we need that separation of power. We need to have the checks and balances, and when you get these partisan judges and partisan attorney generals who are in these positions, then it's a really scary and sad day for America, and we're seeing that. Merrick Garland even referring President Trump's cases over. Right there, everyone should have known that this was political. Joe Biden has made jokes about him being in court, was scheduled to, speak to the ruling over a week in advance of the ruling, and it's sad that we don't have the strong checks and balances that we ought to in America.
Well, the sad thing being, in your case, you're a mom who got frustrated with the direction of her nation and decided to step up and do something about it. And you've been drug into court now. You've had to do these types of legal battles, personal attacks on your family. In my opinion, that's a sad state of where we are in this country, that the debates aren't on policy. There's a viciousness, especially if you're an effective conservative. There's a viciousness on the radical left to utilize lawfare to go after you. And it disappoints me. And I think they're doing the same thing to Donald Trump. Grateful that you're fighting hard. Lauren Boebert, her website, laurenforcolorado.com. That's laurenforcolorado.com. Thank you for taking a few moments to be on the Jeff and Bill Show and responding to yesterday's historic verdict.
Yes, thank you so much, and happy to come back on anytime. And Jeff, Bill, I really love it when you have Richard Holtorf on giving interviews. The more he talks, the better it is for all of us.
And he had to respond to an interview he did with us last night. And Kylie Clark did not give us the credit he should have.
Never does.
He never does. But some of his comments found his way into the debate yesterday. Hey, real quick, who besides you do you think performed well in the debate yesterday? Who was number two?
Jerry Sonnenberg.
Interesting.
I do think that Jerry had a very well-tempered statesman like conduct, and he was very respectful. Throughout this entire debate, no one has wanted the mudslinging in the Republican Party. It's been very well known at every event that we go to that the hits don't land well, and I think it's very deceiving for my opponents who have honored that this entire time to now get in front of a camera and think it's okay to go back on the statesmanship that they have shown throughout this entire campaign, throughout this entire primary, just because they're in front of a TV camera or feel threatened by me. So I think that Jerry did a fantastic job of showing that statesmanship. And, I know that we need to unify at the end of this, but, it's hard to see who a person really is when you spend so many months on the campaign trail with them and those true colors start to show. But nevertheless, we will unify June 25th. And I look forward to representing you all in the 4th District.
Lauren Boebert, her website, laurenforcolorado.com. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Friends, I want to talk to you about roll them out shelves. We got them installed at the house. They're wonderful. Yesterday, I was just using our pantry. I have access to things I've never been able to in our cupboard and in our laundry room now. These are fantastic. Our friends Joyce and Brent Tolliver with Roll 'em Out Shelves install these shelves. They're very high quality Baltic birch wood built right here in Colorado, and they allow you to access all these things in your kitchen and the space that you wouldn't typically have. They're with us on values. We have a great time when they come out to the house. They come out first, do all the measurements, and then you talk price. By the way, you can start this for less than $1,000 as you embark on your very own home makeover journey with Roll 'em Out Shelves. And let me tell you, these are built to last, high quality Baltic birch shelves built right here in Colorado with a lifetime guarantee. You can trust that your space will stay organized for years. Give Joyce and Brent, the dynamic duo behind Roll 'em Out Shelves, a call today at 303-475-9601 or visit their website, rollemoutshelves.com, for your free in-home estimate. Trust me, folks, the process is a breeze. You'll never look back. And don't forget to tell them Jeff sent you. All right, let's go real quick to the phones. Joe Arvada, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning.
Hi,
Morning.
Jeff. Hi, Bill. You know, yesterday I thought was a just magnificent event for DJT.
Oh, yeah,
and
why?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, please.
Well, let me just refute one thing. Donald J. Trump tried to present a authority previously in the Justice Department to show that case should have been a bookkeeping error.
Yeah.
But Judge Marsham denied him to the stand. He would not allow that person to come and testify as a witness. And that's a good example of really bad partiality on his behalf. Also, the 444 thing. Have you ever heard a judge say, well, four of you can agree on this thing? Let's not name the actual crime,
yeah.
but let's four of you can decide on this, and let's just have a soup du jour. Anybody thinks that Donald J. Trump did a crime here, we can all just vote independently. Really?
Well, Joe, actually, Joe, that does happen in some criminal cases. And the example I would use were things like fraud and major
In New
fraud.
York.
But hang on, but like Ponzi schemes, because you can have the prosecution present a series of alleged crimes that the defendant committed in furtherance of the Ponzi scheme. All the jurors do not have to agree on each and every one of those things being crimes. They just have to agree that some of those were crimes. They can all disagree on which ones they were, but it's the furtherance of the final crime. And but I think you make a great point, honestly, about the FEC witness not being allowed. And when I talk about Donald Trump's defense letting him down, I want to know personally why they didn't present that. Not say, hey, the judge isn't letting us do this, but instead I would flip it. I would have come in and said, listen, this seems to be an FEC violation. Here's the rule set inside of the FEC violation. We need to ask the prosecution, where's the FEC? Where are they involved in this? How come they're not? But they didn't do that. I think they let him down, man.
Our attorneys are not to present their own version except in opening and closing arguments. You don't get to say, oh, well, I'm the attorney. Now I'm going to present my evidence that I think should be done. No, that's not the way it is. You present evidence in terms of observers, witnesses, or actual physical evidence.
Joe, great call. We're just out of time. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah,
we'll be
thanks.
right back. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're standing by. President Trump is set to give some remarks. We'll bring those to you live, so you're going to want to stick with us. You can get the remarks live here on the Jeff and Bill Show. We're standing by waiting for him to take the podium. And next hour, we're going to dive into the Common Sense Institute's got a new study out, the ongoing costs of Denver migrants. Here's some of their key findings. City education and healthcare costs for migrants since 2022 total an estimate of $216 million to $340 million.
Wait, that's not the number that Mayor Mike gave us. Or was it different?
What?
What did you? I know exactly. Why? I can't wait to see how the Common Sense Institute is going to do the Scooby-Doo thing and pull the mask off the villain and say, it was the mayor all along. You silly kids.
We're going to have the author of the study, DJ Summers, on with us. This is some shocking news you're definitely not getting from the mayor's office.
It makes sense, though.
They're going to hold them accountable. And you get a sense of where these migrants are coming from. Venezuela, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The real information we're going to get from the Common Sense Institute. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
A.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, center. and sometimes a little crazy. It's a beautiful day in the greatest country in history. We're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions and critical analysis. Most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab another cup of coffee, Denver. It's 9 a.m. on a Friday. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after the news, we're going to be joined by DJ Summers. He's got a new study out, The Ongoing Cost of Denver Migrants. What is it really costing our city? And are you getting the truth from the mayor's office? We'll talk with him and more, but let's check in on the Blake Olson News. Good morning, Blake.
Wow, what a show. Thank you very much, Jeff. I can't believe it's 9 o'clock already. 56 and cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the upper 70s this afternoon. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
This is going to go up on appeal. I think it's going to be reversed in the state or federal systems. But it's moments like this when you're on the other side, when you disagree with a verdict, that you have to take a leap of faith in the rule of law.
Law professor Jonathan Turley, travesty of justice, misdemeanors rose to felonies in Judge Mersham's courtroom Thursday, and former President Trump lost. But most American voters can see through it all. Lauren Boebert on Last Hour with Jeff and Bill.
Sad day for America. I don't know if I'm mad or depressed or just fired up and ready to go. What we saw yesterday was a gross miscarriage of justice, and we knew from the beginning that President Trump was not going to get a fair trial by Judge Merchan or in New York City.
Chair of the Colorado GOP, Dave Williams, was also a guest. Was this case rigged?
I guarantee you right now this was coordinated, but even if it wasn't coordinated, they all know their marching order, the Democrats, that Joe Biden is losing this election. So by hook or by crook, they're going to do whatever they can to defeat President Trump, to include using lawfare and rigging the American legal system.
Longtime DA and former host of this show, George Brauchler.
To the extent that rigged requires coordination, no. I don't think this was coordinated. And anybody that's heard me talk before, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't think that there are forces in D.C. that are pulling Alvin Bragg's strings, but that there don't need to be. They have a common purpose. The common purpose is that they loathe and detest Donald Trump. And I think that whether it's a conscious decision or subconscious, it seeps into all the decisions that they make. Rigged from the standpoint that I think that Alvin Bragg had a corrupt purpose, absolutely.
So will George vote for Trump?
Pass. No, thanks for having me on, guys. This has been, as always, a fantastic
the phone is breaking up.
But in this crappy binary process where I have to choose between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I'm still committed to the path that is least destructive for America, and that is not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't feel like I have any other legitimate choice here.
Attorney Chris Murray said that he was surprised by the verdict, but it's not over.
In order to turn this from falsification of business records by itself in New York, that's a misdemeanor. And it comes with almost no possibility for jail time. It's basically a fine. It's never prosecuted. The Class C felonies, which President Trump was convicted of, are falsification of business records in order to cover up another criminal activity. And I think that's where this case likely gets overturned on appeal.
And the former president ready to speak. He may be speaking outside Trump Tower right now. Man, I love our listeners.
Oh, Reedus, the Democrats is doing the whole Democrats, and you put them in there.
Here's Hugo.
Saying that this thing wasn't rigged is really a far stretch. I mean, we've got a Soros-appointed DA.
And how about Tony?
It won't influence one MAGA supporter. Not a single MAGA supporter is going to jump over and all of a sudden vote for Biden or set it out.
And you can keep them coming here in the 9 o'clock hour. Once again, former President Trump in Manhattan. And really, if you look at it, the campaign is now underway with all this news. Record turnout, record donations coming in to the Trump campaign. Also, $34 million just last night. ESPN confirming that the older brother of Nugget star Aaron Gordon, Drew Gordon, a really good player, he died in a car crash on Thursday. He was 33. The crash occurred in Portland, and the specifics of the crash unclear as the investigation is underway.
Means a lot, man. Means a lot. It's not easy. It was very hard road, very hard, but we are here. Obviously we're not done. We need 4 more, but I think today we all deserve to enjoy this win.
Luka Doncic, 10 3-pointers last night, 36 points. They're headed to the NBA Finals, the Mavericks. They defeated the T-Wolves 124-103 in Game 5 Western Conference Finals. And in baseball, the Rockies started 3-game series in LA against the Dodgers today. They're coming off 2 of 3 against the Guardians. 52 in Parker, 53 in Westminster, and 56 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue on Friday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The 710 5-day forecast calls for very typical weather for this time of year through the weekend. Temperatures will be in the 70s today, afternoon and evening thunderstorms and scattered showers possible. Lows tonight near 50. We're going to be a little bit warmer. Daytime temperature readings will be reaching the low to mid 80s Saturday. We could be quite warm, 85 to 90 Sunday and into Monday, well into the 80s Tuesday. For the weekend, we cannot rule out some scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. I'm meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, breaking news coming through. Donald Trump, convicted on 34 felony accounts, has just taken the podium. He's going to make some remarks. We're going to cut to him live now.
That we just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court. And they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. And maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. And you saw that with a certain witness that went through hell. And when we wanted to do things, he wouldn't let us do those things. But when the government wanted something, they got everything. They got everything they wanted. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We had a DA who is a failed DA. Crime is rampant in New York, violent crime. That's what he's really supposed to be looking at. Crime is rampant in New York. Yesterday in
McDonald's, you had a man hitting them up with machetes, a machete. Whoever can imagine even a machete being wielded in a store, in a place where they're eating and he's going rampant, and Bragg is down watching a trial on what they call crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. It's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right? It means that legal expense. I paid a lawyer, totally legal. I paid a lawyer a legal expense. And a bookkeeper, without any knowledge from me, correctly marked it down in the books. A very professional woman, highly respected. She testified. Marked it down in the books as a legal expense. So a legal expense, paid a lawyer, is a legal expense in the books. It's not sheetrock, construction, or any other thing. It's a legal expense. Think of that. This is what the falsification of business records were. And I said, what else are you going to call it? What else are you going to call it? Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case, because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening. The level of support has been incredible. So the whole thing is legal expense was marked down as legal expense. Think of it. This is the crime that I committed, that I'm supposed to go to jail for 187 years for. When you have violent crime all over this city at levels that nobody's ever seen before, where you have businesses leaving, and businesses are leaving because of this, because heads of businesses say, man, we don't want to get involved with that. I could go through the books of any business person in this city, and I could find things that in theory, I guess, let's indict him, let's destroy his life. But I'm out there, and I don't mind being out there, because I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency. And the people understand it, because I just see a poll just came out, the Daily Mail. That was the first one, came out, was done last night right after the verdict, where I'm up 6 points. 6 points from what we already were. We were leading fairly substantially. We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and it says something differently. But a lot of people have predicted it, because the public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested, and the judge knocked him out, said you can't testify. He actually said you can't testify for anything having to do with the trial. You can say what the federal elections is. Well, that doesn't help. Everybody knows that. But you can't testify. So essentially, he wasn't able to testify. Other people weren't able to testify. But with these people, they were able to use people salacious. By the way, and nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened, and they know it. But they were as salacious as they could be, and it had nothing to do with the case, but it had to do with politics. And do you notice the timing? The timing was perfect. This case was dead. It was dropped by every agency, every governmental board. It was dropped by the highly respected Southern District. They said, no, there's no case here. It was dropped by federal election, and that's what it's about. This is about a federal election, not a state election. You're not even allowed to look at it. They took the state and the city, and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal election, Southern District, and Washington dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen ever to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen. This is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Marchand, who was responsible for another case that was also brought. It destroyed the life of a very good man, by the way. Destroyed the life of a very good man who went to prison once, and then they just put him in prison again because they said he lied. He didn't lie. I looked at the statements he made. In fact, he didn't remember something, and they put him in jail. Again, they've destroyed him. With me for many years, he was an honorable person. He was an honest man. And if you look at what he did, supposedly, it never happened. There's never been anything like this. Over the education of his grandchildren. Over, he didn't report that he had a car or two cars on his income. I don't know. I wonder how many people here have cars. I wonder how many people said, oh, gee, I have a car that's worth X dollars. How do you even figure it? And I guess you do have to report it, but I would say probably almost nobody does. Nobody even thinks about it. They put this man, they destroyed this man, but they put him in jail again because they didn't want him to testify. They didn't want him to testify. That's why he went to jail. They put him in jail twice. He's 77 years old. Now, normally I'd say that's an old guy, but I don't feel 77. Nobody ever says that about me. I'd like them to say, gee, we have to have a little sorrow for this man, because they just don't say that about me, but maybe I'm better off that way. I think I'm probably better off that way. But they put him in jail twice. And you have to see what they put him in jail. And he was threatened by the judge. This man was told, you're going to get 15 years in jail if you don't give up Trump. And he was told that. You're going to get 15 years in jail. And he made a plea deal because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life. And he was told that viciously. We're living in a fascist state. He was told that viciously. So you can go to jail for 4 months, 5 months, or you can get 15 years in jail. So do a plea. Almost who wouldn't do that plea? Everyone does those pleas. It's a horrible thing. There's a whole group of lawyers that fight that. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But they destroyed his life. So many other things. You look at Southern District didn't want to bring the case. Nobody wanted to bring the case. And then you know who didn't want to bring the case most of all is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it. But then he brought it. And they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer, and by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, he got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to 3 3 election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually, wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on 3 things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert, #1 rated in the country, was going to testify. He took a plea on 3 things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the 3 things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And this should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. The media called him a fixer, or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like, for instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him. And a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watched Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin, all very talented people, great people, many more. And they don't know me, essentially. They don't know me. They're legal scholars and experts. But I look at them. I watched Turley this morning saying, there's no crime here. Everybody says there's no crime here, except for this DA that's got the city out of control with crime. It's absolutely out of control. So we have an NDA that was signed. We have legal expenses. And here's the thing on legal expenses. You have 100 where they say they do a charge. I just recorded this out. Falsification of business records in the first degree. It sounds so bad. I said, wow. And even my own lawyers, I get very upset with them because they don't say what it is. They say, well, falsification of legal records is only a felony. Well, that's a lot. Is only they say a misdemeanor. But they try and bring it up to a felony if there's 2 crimes. They have all these different things. The other thing is they missed the statute of limitations by a lot because this was very old. They could have brought this 7 years ago instead of bringing it right in the middle of the election. So they missed the statute of limitations. They did everything. Now, let me give you the good news. The good news is last night, we just got a report this morning. In the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong. Somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people. Because so far, I guess it's backfired. Now, I don't know. I'd rather not have it happen. I don't want to have it backfire. I don't want to win this thing legitimately, not because they were stupid and did things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't have brought this case. They were saying it this morning. This is a case that should not have been brought. I watched Andy McCarthy say this is a case that should not have been brought. And that was this morning. But they all say that. Every legal scholar has said it. And these are great people. They really understand the law. The other thing, a poll just came out. The first poll, I don't know, maybe others will be bad. But a poll just came out a little while ago. The Daily Mail. Does anybody read the Daily Mail? It's very good. They have a good poll. At least I like it today. And the Daily Mail just came out with a poll. And it has Trump up 6 points in the last 12 hours. 6 points. 6 points since this happened. Who thought this could happen? Because the people of our country know it's a hoax. They know it's a hoax. They get it. You know, they're really smart. And it's really something. So we're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant. And you got to see that with Bob Costello, a fine man. I've never seen anything like it. And neither has anybody that was in that courthouse where he demanded that the courthouse be cleared. Now, the good news is most of the people in the courthouse were the media. And anybody that was in the media, if you're fair, you'll say, wow. That was anger. That was crazed. He was crazed. And the reason that Bob Costello acted a little bit upset, which I think he has a right to, was that every question he was being asked was being objected to by the other side and sustained by the judge. Sustained. I think he did it many times. I don't know what the number, many times. Even I was sitting there saying, and these were basic questions. And I never saw anybody treated that way by a judge. And I've been treated very badly by 2 other judges also, because it's all the same thing. And it all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. He's the worst president in the history of our country. The most incompetent. He's the dumbest president we've ever had. He's the dumbest president, most incompetent president. And he's the most dishonest president we've ever had. And so many he's a Manchurian candidate. You take a look at the way he treats China, Russia, so many others. You know, I ended the Russian pipeline. It was dead. He comes in and he approves it.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're continuing to monitor remarks made by Donald Trump following this historic 34 count felony verdict that came through yesterday. He's making remarks this morning. We'll continue to monitor this. You know, I think he would have done better with Dan Kaplan.
Yes,
Sorry.
he might have. I think so too.
Our friends at Dan Kaplan Law, I've known Dan for years. Dan is pro-life, pro-family, pro-America. This guy is a juggernaut in the courtroom. I recommend you choose somebody that shares your values because that matters a lot to everybody involved in the injury case. It says a lot about you too. Dan has dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplan Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Kaplan Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dankaplanslaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS.law.com. We'll continue. We're monitoring Trump's remarks following a historic 34-count felony conviction that came in yesterday from the New York sham case in Manhattan. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour in Berlin, I'm Trent Murray, and here are the top stories we're following. Chipotle has come out swinging over claims its portion sizes have shrunk. The Mexican fast food giant responding to TikTok users who have been posting what purports to be small serving sizes of burrito bowls, tacos, and enchiladas. In a statement, the company says despite the food for all, there have been no changes to portion sizes and that corporate has reinforced proper portioning with store employees. Yesterday, the jury in Donald Trump's hush money case found the former president guilty of all charges. But will it impact voters' opinions of him? In New York, Haley Bianco reports.
A new survey found that overall, 2 out of 3 voters have already made up their minds about who they're going to vote for. Most Americans say a guilty verdict in Donald Trump's New York trial is not likely to affect the way they vote in November. 67% of those responding to the poll say a guilty verdict would have no influence on their vote. 17% say it would make them less likely to vote for Trump, but that's balanced by the 15% that say a guilty verdict would make them more likely to cast their ballot for the former president.
And Salem News Channel will carry former President Trump's address this morning live at 11 a.m. Eastern. And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Trent Murray in Berlin on Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, a fire show today as we talked about the historic 34-count verdict that came against Donald Trump yesterday. Chris Murray's joined us, George Brauchler, Heidi Ganahl, Dave Williams, Lauren Boebert. We're now taking your calls and monitoring Trump's speech as he's responding right now. I do want to tell you about something tonight that's very important to the 710 KNUS family. If you're looking for a great night out, how about a night at Casino Royale? It's tonight, Mile High Station, to benefit the Second Chance Center. Second Chance offers care management, mentoring, and vital resources to assist formerly incarcerated individuals in reestablishing their lives and becoming successful members of the community. We're proud to announce that News Talk 710's own John Corbliss will be honored at the event tonight. For complete details about a night at Casino Royale benefiting the Second Chance Center, go to scccolorado.org, as in Second Chance Center, Colorado, scccolorado.org. John works around here and is an absolutely delightful person to work along with, part of the 710 KNUS family. And he's being honored tonight because he's gone through the program and he's doing fantastic. So excited to hear from John next week. I think he's going to join us in studio, right? Talk about it.
Yeah, he is. And he's such a great dude. So it's going to be great. And his story, oh boy, there are some things there that are really, really strong and very emotional. And what he has done on the other end to put his life back together and where he is now, it's something special. Yeah, you're not going to want to miss it.
I want to talk to you about American financing. Everything is still really expensive, and by the time you pay all those monthly bills, there's not much left, so you end up swiping your credit card, trapping you in high-interest credit card debt. If you're a homeowner, American financing can help you. Interest rates have dropped into the fives. You heard that right, into the fives, much lower than your credit card interest rate. American financing is saving customers an average of $854 a month by using the cash in their home to pay off high interest debt. That's $10,000 a year. Make the free 10-minute call to see how much you can save. They never charge any upfront fees. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing, 303-695-7000. That's 303-695-7000. AmericanFinancing.net, NMLS 182334, NMLS, ConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 start at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 303-695-7000 for details about credit costs and terms. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Jay, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Jay.
Hey, good morning. Good show. Lots of different perspectives on what happened yesterday, for sure.
Yeah, what's yours?
Well, I think they just reelected Donald Trump.
Do you? Do you think
it's that strong? I think that people are fed up, and if you don't believe that, then just go watch To Kill a Mockingbird. Nobody likes to be accused of something they did not do. I've signed tons of NDAs with my employees, and I've signed with every company I've ever worked for. And had I violated them, there was a very strong cash return to the company and also possible court.
Yeah, there's nothing illegal about NDAs, but Colorado voters, especially college-educated suburban women, do not like Donald Trump. There's a visceral gut reaction they have against him. Does this legitimize their gut reaction that he's now a convicted felon?
No, actually, I'd like those college-educated suburban women to find if they would allow their children to be babysat by Joe Biden or Donald Trump's family. I think that'll answer the question. Overnight, not just babysit. Joe's a molester. You can see it.
There's a weird hair sniffing that takes place.
Jay, I like it, but man, you're drawing a conclusion that I'm not certain is necessarily fair. I understand the weirdness, but the idea that Biden's a molester, really, I like it, Jay, but he's been in public life for over 3 decades. You don't think Oppo Research would have turned that up by now? Dude ran as the vice president for Obama. We know exactly the level of investigations that were going on to prevent that ticket from getting a second run. We know that. Come on. If there was something in Oppo research that he was a molester, we'd have it. You got
the diary. You got the diary from the daughter.
You have one mention at one time and nothing. Hang on. It was one mention, one time, and nothing's backed that up or corroborated it. That's it. That's all you got. Okay? If that's it, but yet all the things that happened that Michael Cohen says happened, other people say happened with Donald Trump, that's all washed away. This is the issue. Okay, fine. Have a little bit of consistency. A little bit of consistency on these points.
I feel like we could say that the other way. I feel like we dismiss Biden and all this stuff because, there's not collaborating evidence.
All what stuff? This
all
stuff?
The weird hair sniffing, dude.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's a molester.
I would not put my kids around him. To Jay's point,
again, doesn't mean doesn't mean he's a molester.
A video of Cory Gardner's kids. Someone showed.
Oh, geez.
And Joe Biden grabbed Cory's daughter. It's weird. All right, want to talk to you all about a kinder, gentler way to experience wellness and overcome pain. I'm thriving, fighting back my workout soreness with UltraCur. Look, there's lots of curcumin products out there, right? They all want to make you pay to try it. UltraCur believes so much in what they're going to be able to do for your soreness. They're going to provide it for a free 3-day trial. All you have to do is go to the Denver Metro Naturals Grocers, and ask for the health coach or the vitamin manager for your free 3-day trial of UltraCur. It's a patented, non-prescription, natural capsule that works fast. If you've tried everything without much success, even other natural curcumin products, you owe it to yourself to try UltraCur today. Get curious, Denver. Head to the Natural Grocers. Grab your free 3-day UltraCur trial. No strings attached. If you're wondering about the research, get the lowdown at getultranow.com. That's getultranow.com. Let's go to Brian. Line 2, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, good morning. This is a sad day for America. And it just is, because you look at, no serious scholar has looked at this and said Trump should go on trial. Yeah. Even CNN's own experts were like, this case is flailed. No. And you've got 8 years. This happened 8 years ago over a non-disclosure. Why didn't they do anything 8 years ago? Everybody knows it's political. My wife is one of those college-educated suburbia women who she doesn't like Trump at all. Mm-hmm. But she's even saying this morning, this is a travesty. My neighbor, college educated, hates Donald Trump. Even she said, if this happens to him, what people don't realize is it's going to happen to somebody on the left when the left turns on them. So the left gets what they want, but it's just a travesty. And we're losing all the people with, TDS. They're losing the forest for the trees here. And I think Billy is a little bit too, where, Trump's a felon. And we're so excited to say that. But look at what's happened to the justice system now.
I'm not celebrating the fact that he's a felon. I'm not celebrating the fact. Honestly, I don't think he should have been convicted being a felon. I think there should have been misdemeanors. And again, I haven't discussed this with Jeff or anybody else so far this morning, is I think the smartest thing for Judge Marchand to do is at best fines, probation minimum, but at best fines. The worst thing in the world for him to do is to put Donald Trump in any sort of jail situation. Not even a single minute should he be behind bars. And it'd be crap if he did it. That's how I feel. I feel at best this is a fine.
Yesterday's Twitter account from the left in Colorado.
Yes.
At least I'm not a felon. At least I'm not a felon.
Yep.
At least Democrats aren't running a convicted felon. That is going to be the core message. I'm not convinced it's the worst message in the world. I think there are some people, Brian, I'm actually a little surprised to hear that people are seeing through it. But I think there's a number of voters out there who are going to go, he's a convicted felon.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Brian, about the idea of felon the jacket? Is it going to work the way the Democrats think? What do you think, man?
I really don't think so, because I think you've got people that hate Trump. They're excited today, and they were never going to change their vote based on the verdict. If Trump was acquitted, the same people were going to hate him that hate him today. So this trial just has nothing to do with the election. It's not going to sway anybody. I mean, the Democrats would hope it and love that it did, but it's not going to. Based on what my wife said, what people at my work have said who don't like Trump, it didn't work.
Hey,
if
Brian,
anything, it fires up the base.
I agree with you, man.
What it does to the judicial system is far worse then what result they think they're going to get from the election, it's
Brian,
not working.
Just to interrupt you, I disagree with you on the judicial system, but I do think this can and will swing the election. And I think it's a positive for Trump, but not in the way most people are talking about. And I want you to react to this. The way I think it swings the election is Trump's fundraising boom. The problem he had going into this was he was so far behind Biden, he wasn't going to be able to play at the level Biden was based on media and messaging. This can balance that out. What do you think about that? Could this be the thing? Not the voters looking at the conviction, but the fundraising. Could that be the thing that swings this thing in Trump's favor for good?
Yes. And I think it's absolutely going to fire up people that wouldn't contribute because they thought he's a billionaire, he's got a ton of money, the RNC's corrupt. They're going to contribute now because they're seen. And nobody likes to see somebody that shouldn't go to be convicted. From the judge even saying, if you find one of these things that he did wrong, we're going to bundle it up and now we can convict on all over. I mean, just the whole thing was so sour that now we're stuck here with the judicial system's corrupt. And that's what's staining me today. It wasn't ever going to affect my decision to vote for Trump or not. And I don't think it was going to affect most people's ability to vote
Brian,
for Trump or not.
I really appreciate the call.
Right,
We're
man.
just
Thanks.
out of time. Thank you. Great
Have
call.
a good weekend, man.
Want to talk to you all about the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun. But the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture. And I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture continue improving the efficiency of their irrigation systems and adopting farming practices to help crops use less water to grow. They're planting drought-resistant varieties, and they're leading talks with state policymakers about how to preserve water supplies when we have good years like this last one. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to the Colorado Farm Bureau at coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join. We'll continue with your calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
What a historic show on the Jeff and Bill Show. Lauren Boebert, Dave Williams, George Brauchler, Heidi Ganahl, Chris Murray, all joining us to respond to the historic 34-count felony conviction against Donald Trump in the Manhattan sham trial.
And shout out to the caller that said, hey, you know the difference between Republicans and Democrats? For Republicans, MAGA means make America great again. The Democrats, it means make America go away. I appreciate that. That was nice. That was nice.
A good one.
Appreciate that one, caller.
75 degrees with a few afternoon storms today, Saturday. 83 Sunday, 90 and mostly sunny. Thank God. This is why I live in Colorado this time right now, except for the Miller Moss.
Yeah, we have got kind of a vestibule as we enter into the office here.
Yeah.
And it like traps all the Miller moths. And so what you have to do is you have to walk through it like it's that the game that they play on the TV where the money's flying around in the chamber in the air. That's what it's like. You're walking through this flying Millers all over the place.
Exactly right.
Awful.
Wrote about my thoughts on the verdict yesterday at my website, jeffhunt.com. Another American institution falls to the radical left. Hey, check us out, 710 KNUS. You've been listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS. We'll see you Monday.